Thank you. Thank you. Places, everyone. If I had access to the lights, I'd kind of turn them up and down for a second.
Sometimes I feel like I should just keep standing.
Okay, everybody ready? Well, good evening and welcome everyone to the Federal City Council for June 5th of 2018. Would you all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome. It's great to see a big audience here. We're going to have a great meeting and a lot of important things to talk about. Let's see here.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, Councilmember Duclos.
Yeah, I would like to make a motion. I would like to move to remove item 5G, Resolution 2018 Fee Schedule Amendment from the consent agenda and to send it back to committee for further consideration.
All right. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been a motion and a second to remove a particular item off of item G off the consent agenda and to send it back to Councilmember Duclos' committee, of which she is the chair, which is the Finance and Economic Development Committee. Is there any discussion on that point? Send it back to committee. All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. A motion passes unanimously. Item G is therefore removed from the calendar. Councilor Moore, do you have another motion?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, and I may need the attorney's help on this a little bit. I'd like to move item E to follow after item F. Actually, I apologize. I'd like to move item E to council business for a council discussion on that item.
All right. So item E, which is the TAG Awards, July through December 2018, is that correct?
That's correct.
All right,
I'll second that.
There's been a motion, a second, to take item 5E and move over to business, which would then essentially be item B on business. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, so we'll remove that from the consent agenda and move over to business, over to 7B. All right, now we're going to get into our proclamations. We've got a very special event, which is coming to the Northwest, the Seattle area, and specifically Federal Way, with regard to our Special Olympics. We've got two proclamations. The first I will ask Councilmember Moore to address, which is the proclamation for the 2018 Special Olympics Washington, and Dave Lennox, the president of the state, the president of the state Special Olympics. And then after that, we'll address item B, the proclamation for the 2018 Special Olympics USA Games, with Beth Knox, president and CEO. With that, Councilmember Moore.
Mr. Mayor, thank you so much. It is an honor to present this proclamation, and Mr. Mayor, I really do appreciate you saying yes to this, and that was very kind of you. So before I read the proclamation, I have to say that this is an important topic for all of us, and being able to build a world where there's inclusivity, I think it's just really something that's really important for everybody. And so with that, I'll dive right in and read the proclamation and present it to you, okay? Whereas the athletics and recreational programs within Federal Way are known to draw our community together, contribute to the well-being of our citizens, and offer active, healthy lifestyles for all, and whereas the mission of Special Olympics Washington is to provide year-round sports training and athletic competitions in a variety of Olympic-type sports for children and adults with intellectual disabilities, and whereas through programming and sports, health education, and community building, Special Olympics is changing the lives of people with intellectual disabilities, and whereas Special Olympics is able to remove barriers and stigmas that people with intellectual disabilities face and share with the community the gifts and the talents they possess, and whereas the City of Federal Way proudly extends the best to the individuals and teams from Special Olympics Washington, Team Washington, in their future athletic endeavors at the upcoming 2018 Games, July 1st to the 6th, 2018 in the Seattle region, and whereas the City of Federal Way specifically commends the athletes who are residents of Federal Way in their efforts at the game, particularly overcoming any challenges and to achieve success at the Games. Now, therefore, we, the undersigned mayor and city council, ask the community to recognize the hard work, effort, passion, and courage each Special Olympic Washington athlete has put into their quest to compete at the upcoming 2018 Games, USA Games. Signed this 5th day of June 2018, Federal Way Mayor and City Council.
So thank you very much for this. It's an important time for us as an organization, and it's an amazing time for us as a state. And I am most excited that the nation will get to come and see Federal Way and how a good community wraps itself around and supports all of its citizens. You have really stepped up for these games, and for Team Washington, the fact that of the 200 athletes that will represent Washington, 19 are from here in Federal Way. So that's a huge percentage. So that's a testament to how good you are. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dave.
Mayor, for the purpose of record, Tim Johnson, Director of Economic Development. We're going to show you just a quick video before we make the presentation on the 2018 USA Games Proclamation.
We have been watching the headlines over the last week, and these games have been getting some serious attention.
With athletes competing in front of over 70,000 attendees, this year's games promise to be the biggest yet.
1, 2, 3,
This is the USA Games. We're all going to have family members there, friends coming down from all over to watch and to win it, to be the first team to do it. The thoughts are unreal.
You'll see guys pulling for each other. It's a brotherhood. This is what a team is all about.
They've practiced every week since March. We know we're going to face some major challengers.
It's an unbelievable experience. They're taking it day by day and just loving every minute of it.
Each and every one of you have already accomplished a lot, but you can go even further. I'd like to welcome the future athletes of Special Olympics. Congratulations to all of you, because you are all champions.
Never let anyone tell you that your dreams are too big.
Believe. Set your goals high.
Always dream big.
All right, thank you, and thank you, Tim, for your work. That's a great video. Did you want to say a few words?
Yeah, please, Mayor. We're there. I don't think there is one part of the City of Federal Way that is not working on preparation for the games. And for the purposes of the audience tonight, I want to explain a couple things. We started this process in 2015 when we found out that the Seattle region and Federal Way was going to be touched by this. And so we've been working on it with the culmination of moving forward on this activity. And later tonight, you'll be approving a contract with the Special Olympics for their efforts. Significant to what's going on here is that ESPN ABC will be carrying television of the games. And so one of the things that we're doing is obviously dressing the city and prepping the city so that when you turn on television, as Councilmember Deanie Duclos has talked about on so many occasions relative to the U.S. Olympic trials that we've had here, you know that you're in Federal Way, not in Seattle, when you're watching the swimming and the softball. This Saturday, we have a rally at 10 a.m. at the Farmers Market, which will be introducing all of the Federal Way residents who are in the athletics, in the U.S. Games coming up July 1 through the 7th. I'm trying to buy time because I'm hoping that the President CEO of,
Here she is.
Here she is.
Beth, come on down.
So she made it. And my heartbeat has now dropped substantially. Thank you very much for being here.
I had no idea you were trying to vibe.
That's what I was doing. And you notice I was doing this kabuki dance up here, you know. And
You did a great job, Tim.
I just thank you very much. I want to just conclude by saying one thing. There are three. This is the major event. This is certainly just absolutely wonderful. But for everybody in this room, I want to express this. We all know about Wild Waves and how many hundreds of thousands of people come to Federal Way on an annual basis. But within a 35-day period, there will be almost 50,000 people this summer, from the third week of June through the end of July, that will be in here. And there'll be three major events. The first one will occur the third week in June, Mayor. As you know, you and the council will be invited to it. That is the International Underwater Robotics Competition, where teams from around the world will be competing at the Aquatic Center. Just a phenomenal activity. The obvious one is the second one, which Beth is here tonight, the Special Olympic Games. And then the third one is the Young Ladies National Fast Pitch Championship, 170 some odd teams, 20 young ladies each, coming in here the end of July. So we have a tremendous amount of activity, and this could not have been done without your Lodging Tax Advisory Committee, and three members are here tonight. I want at least to recognize them: Joanne Paquette, Jenny Vasquez, and Rosiel. They have done just a yeoman's job, and of course Martin Moore is our chair of that committee. So with that, I will turn it over to you, Mayor, and the proclamation.
Well, thank you, and Beth, thank you for being here. And as many of you saw the video that Beth and I filmed in this very room, gosh, now a couple months ago.
Yeah.
And before I read the proclamation, I want to tell you that I really thank you, Tim, for all the hard work that you've done. I remember about 3 years ago, it was 2015, where he started talking about the Special Olympics in 2018, and I kept thinking to myself, God, that's a long time away. And we have been working on these plans. You know, by we, I mean Tim and his team and everybody here at City Hall, and Beth and you know, with the national and the state organizations, and you know, just everybody here has just really put their shoulders and their hearts into it, and really appreciate it. And so we're glad to have you here, and it is amazing how time flies by. Tempus fugit. And so I'll go ahead and read this, and then I'll bring this down, and we'll have you address the crowd here. Proclamation, 2018 Special Olympics USA Games. Whereas the mission of the USA Games is to showcase the abilities of athletes with intellectual disabilities and the impact of Special Olympics through world-class competition, inspirational experiences, and modeling inclusion for all. And whereas the 2018 Special Olympics USA Games will be held in the Seattle region July 1st through July 7th of 2018, with more than 4,000 athletes competing in 14 Olympic-type team and individual sports, and whereas thousands of coaches representing 50 state programs and the District of Columbia, along with the support from tens of thousands of volunteers and an estimated 70,000 spectators, are expected for the 2018 USA Games, and whereas the City of Federal Way will be the host for swimming and softball, two venues, the King County Aquatic Center and Celebration Park, will be the backdrop for these events. Additionally, other city facilities will be used for the preparation of volunteers and the torch run. And whereas in addition to showcasing the awe-inspiring abilities of thousands of athletes with intellectual disabilities, the 2018 USA Games in Seattle will model the ideals of inclusion and celebrate the 50th anniversary of the Special Olympics movement. And Whereas the 2018 USA Games will serve as a catalyst for the City of Inclusion initiative and will showcase the work the Seattle area businesses and organizations are doing to create a community where people with intellectual disabilities are meaningfully and fully welcomed and valued. Now, therefore, we, the undersigned mayor and the city council members, proclaim July 1st through the 7th, 2018 to be, quote, Special Olympics USA Games Week, and call upon the community to embrace the spirit of Special Olympics, skills, courage, acceptance, and joy, which transcends boundaries of geography, nationality, gender, age, race, or religion, and recognize the Games' positive contribution to our region and society as a whole. Signed this 5th day of June, 2018.
Do a photo.
Thank you very much, Mayor, and thank you to the council as well. I just want to echo the mayor's comments in support of Tim Johnson's hard work. He's just been a phenomenal partner for us. The planning has been long, and we're so excited to be like 26 days out now. It's just fantastic. So we really appreciate the incredible support from the City of Federal Way. You mentioned the volunteers. We started off with a goal of 10,000 volunteers to support the games, and we are now at over 15,000. So it's been just an amazing response, and most importantly, I think it is about the response to the idea of inclusion, and that this is the new standard that we want to set all of our plans and our communities by. So thank you for that commitment that you've made to being a region of inclusion here, and thank you for the support of the 2018 USA Games. I have some USA Games lapel pins that I'd love to pass out to the crowd here. And,
Please.
Encourage you to spread them around the city. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Beth. You guys, let's also give Tim Johnson a big round of applause for all the work he did.
No.
The hardest working man in government.
But you have to understand something. This could not have occurred without a couple different people. And one of them is the guy that helps write the checks. That's our finance director, Adair Woola. Yeah. So he's plays a significant role. Then you got a guy by the name who's just sitting down now, who very seldom ever do see him sit down, and that's John Hutton, our great Parks and Rec director, who, if you have not seen Celebration Park, it looks about as great as you ever have seen it. Yeah. So he's done a tremendous job on that. Our community development director, Brian Davis, has gotten all the sign codes aligned so we can hang all these wonderful banners throughout our city saying, welcome to Federal Way. And if we look the opposite direction to our sign code, he's figured it all out. So if there's anybody that's got complaints, send them to Brian. And then Mara Anselm, our great public works director, and our police department. Andy Wong hasn't been here, but Stephen Nail is here tonight, and they've just done a yeoman's job in preparation of all of the emergency services, all the transportation, all of the public works activities. These department heads done a great job.
So Tim, let's talk about the rally at the Farmers Market this Saturday, 10 a.m. That's in the former Sears parking lot at the Commons on that far west side. Justin Babineau, the former Seahawk, will be the MC. Any other highlights?
Well, Rose Eel, who handles the farmers market's got quite an exciting agenda, but all of you will be there. Our members of the state legislature will be there. We will be introduced to all of the residents of Federal Way who have made the USA team and are representing Team Washington. I believe that's correct, Dave, if I'm not right. It's called Team Washington, yes, as we go into the USA Games. So everyone will get to meet that. And then, of course, this past week, Dave he's still standing, but he had the Special Olympics Washington State Games this past week, and many of you probably saw the numbers in our community rise this weekend because we had them at the Aquatic Center. So those folks who participated from Federal Way will also be at the rally. So we're looking at several hundreds of people coming in for this event, and I think it'll be lovely to introduce. Now, I know that some of those participants are in the back.
I'm going to call that up next. And then, what we're going to do is on the city website, we'll make sure on our social media pages and our information that we get out with regard to the venues, in regard to exact times of the events, and make sure that people in our community can get out and see those. And the opening ceremonies are on July 1st.
July 1st, Husky Stadium. If Beth and Jamie haven't left yet, they might want to come up and talk about that. Tickets are available online. That's a wonderful event. They're trying to get 75,000 people to that. And I have been trying to pull out of Beth who the headliner is for that. I keep trying to because I know that John Hutton is looking for Bruce Springsteen to be there, but I'm not sure that she's got Bruce, but I know that she's got some top flight talent that will be there. The other thing I know that Beth wanted to make sure that I ensured that all of you know is that the events are free to everyone. So you can go to Celebration Park. You don't have to worry about paid parking. You don't have to worry about admission price. The same thing with the Aquatic Center or any of the other events you want to go to. So in the case of our team, particularly if you want to watch the flag football team that Federal Way has, or I believe, Dave, is it our soccer team that's from Federal Way too as well? You can follow them and attend those as venues for free, and I think that's really tremendous to be able to watch, and it's really important, Mayor. One last thing that I want you to know, we've been really so fortunate to be working with the Special Olympics. They have utilized the Performing Arts and Event Center on a multitude of different things. But one of them is that Beth and her team have been choreographing the opening ceremonies here at the PAC, and that includes a 2,200-person choir. And I can tell you what, I've heard them practice once already at the PAC, and it's just angelic. The sounds are wonderful, and they will be coming back, I think on the 23rd of June, I believe that's the next time. And if you want to hear something just absolutely gorgeous, just stand out in front of the Performing Arts and Event Center because it just echoes gorgeously throughout. So
It's great. Okay, well, thank you very much. And with that, let's, Kevin Hutchinson and your team, come on up. We've got recognition of Special Olympics teams qualified to represent Team Washington, our inclusion coordinator who does tremendous work at in our Parks Department at the Community Center, Kevin Hutchinson, and Special Olympics assistant Sharon Boyle. Kevin?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and City Council for recognizing the athletes today that have qualified for the USA Games with Team Washington. We have tonight our unified flag football team and our soccer team who have made it to state. They've actually been working really hard over the past 2 years, not just this last year, to prepare for these games on July 1st. So really happy that you're recognizing them. Not only do these guys practice year-round over the last 2 years, they also do other programs within our community, like our Friendship Theater program, which starts on the 21st of this month down at Knutson Bay, or Knutson Family Theater down at Dumas Bay. So look for tickets there. We sell them at the community center. They start at 7 o'clock. So a lot of these guys are doing tons of different things, so balancing that schedule is really hard for them, and we're really proud of them. So I want to get Sharon Boyle up here, who does all of our Special Olympic sports, and she's going to read off all the names. Sharon does amazing work. She runs all of our Special Olympic programs. We do over 12 sports. We have 150 different athletes that participate every year. So it's not just these 21 athletes right here that are representing Federal Way. It's over 150 athletes. So, okay, yeah. And when we read your name, we'll have you guys stand out front, okay? And I'll get you guys your award. Sure. Vienna Lopez. Yeah, go up front. Troy Marsh. Tara Gunther. Timothy Dempsey. Roy Stewart. Nicholas King. Laura Gorgon. Jonathan Leckband. John Emmett. Josh Bennett. Brad Norman. Ben Kenish. Brandon Grosskost. Alex Williams. Sam's not here. Patrick's not here. And Gary Mork. And then we have our coaches as well. We like to recognize, so coaches, come on up as well.
Council, should we stand up behind him, or, yeah? Okay. I'm standing on my stool. Yes. No, go ahead, Susan. What's that? Oh, sure, yeah. Should we have the president, the state president? Yeah, come on in, you guys. Okay, I'm standing on my tippy toes.
I'm still too short. The tall people are next to me.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you. All right. Good luck, you guys. Thank you.
Don't trip on your...
Exactly.
That would be fun. So pretty.
Okay. Yeah, it is amazing how fast 3 years goes by. I remember thinking, God, that seems like a long time away, and it's here, and it's going to be an absolutely amazing thing. I'm really looking forward to the big ceremony in Seattle, and then seeing the events here in Federal Way. It's going to be a lot of fun. Okay, I think everybody is filing out. Let's turn this over to Councilmember Johnson for certificate of appointment for the Arts Commission.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also want to congratulate all the athletes and folks that put this event together for the Special Olympics. So I would like to invite Karen Brugado to come forward to accept her certificate of appointment for the Arts Commission.
Thank you, Karen. Karen, how long have you been in the Arts Commission now? 2 months. All right. Thank you so much for your service. Okay. Thank you, Councilmember.
That's the next one.
All right. Now, before I get into my emerging issues and report, I want to talk about something very important that happened today here in the city of Federal Way. And there's some regional news and some local news, but I want to make sure I highlight this to say a special thank you to our police department and all of our regional partners. I always say that a city is only as good as its neighborhoods. And we've seen a trend lately that is tearing at the very fabric of some of our neighborhoods here in the city of Federal Way. Illegal marijuana grows have become a problem here. But today, our own police department, along with Valley SWAT, the DEA Task Force, and other local and federal agencies serve 6 illegal marijuana manufacturing warrants here in Federal Way. There are approximately 80 personnel involved in this complex investigation and warrant service. 10 individuals were arrested and booked on various charges stemming from the illegal manufacturing with intent to sell. Several thousand plants in various stages of growth, cash, and equipment were seized in the operation. There were no injuries, and all arrests were without incident. Charges will be filed with the King County Prosecutor's Office. While I mentioned SWAT, DEA Task Force, and other local and federal agencies, we want to say thank you very much to those regional partners, some of those national partners, and some of our neighboring cities to make sure that this was done without any injuries or damages or anything like that. This is, I think, in an age in which marijuana has been legalized for personal use, it does present somewhat of a conundrum when you hear about these, but the reason why I'm talking about this right now is we have a very, very organized crime element that has seeped into our community, and there are literally dozens of homes in our neighborhoods in our city that are affected by this, and I've met with several of these neighborhoods. Let me just say that this is just the beginning, and we're serving notice on those organized crime elements that we are going to take down every one of these houses in our community and hold them accountable. And while the recreational use of marijuana is legal and it's sold through these state stores, we have outside foreign actors and people coming from different countries and different states to essentially take over, buy homes for cash, and proceed in a very methodical fashion to turn homes in the middle of our town and our neighborhoods into grow operations, and that is not the direction this community is going to go. And I want to let you know I'm very impressed and pleased with our police department. We've got Deputy Chief Steve Neal here, and the operation that started in our downstairs room this morning was methodical, organized, and exactly what everyone here in this community would expect if a grow operation was next door to you. And so we met with the people that were neighbors to some of these grow operations several months ago, and we promised they were working on it. So it's always good. But keep an eye out for this, because this is just the beginning, that we're serving notice that this is not going to be tolerated in our community. Okay, now moving on. So this weekend, we just talked about at 10 a.m., we've got the farmers market celebration that we're going to have for the rally for the Special Olympics. 1 hour before that, we're going to have another Paint the Fence. About 3 years ago, we had an opportunity where probably several hundred of our neighbors came together to paint the fence, that long straightaway on 21st Avenue, in which 1,000 feet of fence was painted and cleaned up of a blighted graffiti, or really worn down fencing. And like I said, neighborhoods matter in this community. Now, there's probably 50,000 cars that go by back and forth every day on 320th, the busiest thoroughfare in our community. And one of the long straightaways that I've been looking at, and I know that many of you have as well, are these fences along 320th, specifically on the south side, that essentially abut right up to the city's right-of-way, where there's these long stretches. Some of those fences have fallen down, some have been disrepair, some of them are underpainted or graffiti filled. That and we have been working for the past several weeks, making sure that we pressure wash and getting ready, but we have a number of volunteers that are going to be descending on those fences and painting probably 600 or 700 feet. Yarden, how many feet?
Well, I know it's 12 blocks.
It's 12 blocks of fencing that we have pressure washed. We've got supplies and paint donated. I'll be out there with my little guy and my family at 9 a.m. And it's going to go to 1 p.m. And we need to make sure that as a community, that we make sure that where there is blight in our community, that we address it. And I want to say thank you so much to Yarden, to Shelley Pauls. Who were some of the other partners, Yarden?
John Hutton.
Yeah.
Marwan, and Tyler's involved.
So we've got a number of city staff, but Shelley Pauls has really rallied a lot of the individual people in the community, the faith-based organizations, and just people who want to do something good. So if you've got an opportunity, I know I did a painting project at my house a few years ago that I promised I was going to do, and did. So I've got my paintbrushes all ready. If you have a time on Saturday, anytime between 9 a.m. and 9 a.m. and 1, come on out, even if it's just for a half hour or an hour, and help us paint this fence and pick up trash.
And Brian as well.
Brian Davis, thank you very much. And some of these fences had literally fallen down, and they have been removed now. And right around that area, there used to be neighborhood organizations. And over the course of the past couple of decades, some of those neighborhood organizations just sort of fall to the wayside. And now what we're doing is we're helping our fellow neighbors and making sure that this major thoroughfare shines like we want it to. All right, then. That's 9 a.m. and it'll go for that time. We're going to gather initially across the street on the north side there at the Calvary Church, essentially the 700 block of 320th Street, beginning at 9 a.m. And we'll have refreshments there as well. We've got the Flag Day celebration coming up on not this Saturday, but next Saturday, and that's in the former Sears parking lot at 10 a.m. 8:30. Thank you very much. 9:30. So Flag Day celebration, Saturday, June 16th. former Sears parking lot, 9:30 a.m., and we're going to have some, the city's going to have some big news that I'm going to present at there, and it's just a great opportunity to celebrate our flag, and our beautiful flag and flagpole looks better every day at that location. So come on out for that. We had a Sound Transit Tacoma Dome Link Extension bus tour on May 18th, and I talked about that. And so we started up in the SeaTac area where Angle Lake is, and we've essentially looked at all of the potential routes where Sound Transit, once it finishes in the downtown core in 2024, where it will go down south and what the potential routes are. And obviously, I made very clear, I told him that Councilmember Duclos and each and every one of us, I mentioned you by name, Deanie, that each and every one of us expect that any displaced businesses will be adequately compensated, but more importantly, that we displace as few businesses as possible because of the potential ramifications for the business owners, for the community, and for our revenue stream. So it's very important to us, and that's why I went on that. I'm one of the two co-chairs of the Tacoma Dome Link Extension Public Policy Group. So we're going to have that, and that, again, that's from downtown Federal Way, how it gets back on the freeway or thereabouts and goes south to the Tacoma Dome. So we've got, let's see here, we're going to have an IRG update from Brian Davis, Community Development Director. I felt it was very important as we have certain developments occurring on the, events, I should say, happening on the, with respect to the IRG property. And in a matter of full transparency, I wanted to make sure that we had Brian Davis up here just to give everybody just a status check about where we're at and what's going on. With that, our Community Development Director, Brian Davis.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council and the public. As the mayor mentioned, this is a quick status update of the development applications that are pending on the IRG campus. For reference, this is the campus. On the left is Interstate 5, up is north, south is down. At the bottom is Highway 18, and Weyerhaeuser Way goes along the east side of the campus. Number one is the original headquarters building, and number two is the technology center. Number three is the rhododendron garden and the bonsai area. And I'm going to skip to number 5, which is right here. This is commonly referred to as the South Building, which was recently purchased by the Khalsa Gurmat group, and they are now occupying that. And then items 4 and 6, those are the existing ones on the ground now. Items 4 and 6 are proposed developments on the campus. So number 4 is actually 2 buildings. This is Warehouse A. This is the original application, or modified application of the preferred freezer that first came on the scene in June of 2016. That was the date of its original application. And then in September of last year, we received a second application for a building just to the south of that proposed site, which was called Warehouse B, roughly of the same size. And then recently, November of last year, we received an application for what is referred to as the Green Line Business Park, which is composed of 3 buildings around the Technology Center. I'm going to go through there's a lot of text that is going to be on these slides. I'm not going to read the text. I'm just going to have it up here for the record for viewers at home if they want to view it, or later on YouTube, or if people want to request the actual presentation, they can request that of the city as well, just so that they can have it on record for their reference. So warehouses A and B are currently being reviewed. I'm going to use the terms use process 3 and use process 4. Those are terms that we use to distinguish a different type of reviews that the city uses to look at development applications and reconcile it with the code. And briefly, just to summarize up front, use process 3 is a decision that is made by the city. Use process 4 is a decision that is made by a hearing examiner. The City Council is not involved in this process. So if there are concerns, or if you want to go on record for any of these three applications, or any other application for that matter in the city that is of concern to citizens, the best method is to submit it to the city hall. But just to be clear, your role here on this application, you will not be part of this decision, and that was intended so that you could freely communicate with the public. Because if you were going to play a role of being in a quasi-judicial role, then there'd be strict rules and guidelines about how you could communicate. And so for those citizens that wanted to talk to you, you essentially have to say, sorry, I can't talk about it. And so that was a bit frustrating both to the public and the council, and now you can freely communicate. But just to be clear, the actual decision is not, you're not involved with that. All right, so the first one is Green Line Warehouse A. Again, it is a use process 3 submitted in June of 2016. This is the longest application that we have. By length, I mean the longest in time that has been under review. We've gone back and forth several times with the applicant to make sure that the development proposal can meet the code. It's, as I presented before, it's a unique set of standards that we use that is unique to this property. It's not applied anywhere else in the city of Federal Way. It's only on the IRG campus. So there has been, again, there's some in-depth reviews for this proposal. It's over 200 square feet of building space, and it is still under review. This is a process 3 decision, meaning that when the city is prepared to make the decision, or when it makes the decision, it will be through by the director. And then if there's any concerns, or if a party wants to appeal that, then that is something that they could do, and it would go on to a hearings examiner, which, as I mentioned before, the process 4 that is the hearing examiner decision. It doesn't go through city staff. There's two types of, there's two decisions, I guess I should say, with this and any other application that we'll be talking about tonight. One is what is called a SEPA threshold determination. This is the state's requirement for environmental review for any project. And then below that we have all of our city development standards. So there's two decisions. One is through SEPA. That is something that the city issues, stating that it is that the development either is or is not in compliance with considerations that the state imposes, or that it could be with mitigation. And then there is a decision that is also based on local code that's independent of SEPA. So that is Warehouse A. This has been, we've been going back and forth with them for almost 2 years, well, 2 years now. It's June of 2018 now, so this has been a lengthier process than normal. Most development applications don't take this long to either approve or deny. And I attribute that to the complexity of the zoning on the property. Again, it's unique to this property, and it's not something that we review on a daily basis. And it's on top of that, it's a complex project. Some might say, well, it's just a building. It's a little bit more than, even though it is just a building, it's a little bit more than that when we review this application. We've been, like I mentioned, we've been going back and forth. In other words, we will issue a letter to the applicant stating these are the things that we need you to provide to us before we can make a decision. Then they respond, and then we review that additional material. And then we find that it's still not quite what we need, or they haven't met what we've asked, and so then we send another letter back saying, thank you for the previous response, but we still need A, B, and C. That back and forth has been going on for 2 years. We believe we're at a point that we will be issuing a decision here within the next month or two on this application, at which point, if there's any citizen or group, or if the applicant, for that matter, wants to, has any questions or wants to appeal the decision, then they have the right to do that as long as they've submitted comments or requested to be a party. So that's where we are on Warehouse A. I'll pause there because this is kind of what started it all. And I want to make sure if the council has any questions on this particular application before I go on to Warehouse B or the business park application.
Council, any questions? Deputy Mayor Honda?
Once the decision is made, and let's say the city approves a decision, when would construction begin?
So the approval that we would be issuing is strictly a land use approval, which is to say that it would be an approval that the proposed use, which at this point is just a building, can be developed on the ground that's proposed. It would not be a building permit. So we issue this decision, let's just say nobody appeals it. The next step by the applicant is likely a building permit. Or after appeals are exhausted, then the next step would be a building permit.
So the land would remain as it is until the building permit was?
Correct.
No
They would have-
trees could be cut down, no damage to the?
Yeah, our position is the land use does not give authorization to cut trees.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Councilor Kopang.
Brian, thanks for the presentation. I'm hearing this really for the first time. This is only, well, I'm catching it for the first time. I'm sure it's been said, but they're doing a building, but they have no proposed use for this building whatsoever.
They have no tenant. When they first started, they said they had Orca Bay as their tenant.
Right.
They've amended their application to say there is no tenant, we're just applying for a building. So we don't know what the tenant is at this point. We've assumed a use, and we've applied our traffic analysis and environmental analysis based on a general use. So if they come back, let's say during a building permit process, and propose something entirely different, then we would say, time out, we got to go back and review the traffic and environment different than what you did.
So basically, if this becomes a warehouse, then it's going to be reviewed differently because of the traffic use that would be.
We're
Yeah.
currently reviewing as a warehouse.
Oh, as a warehouse,
Yeah.
okay, all right.
Yeah.
Okay, but with no tenant identified?
Yeah.
All right. How about building B?
B as well.
They're both warehouses?
In terms of traffic counts, we're reviewing them as warehouses. Now,
Okay.
the Green Line Business Park is.
Yeah, can you explain how we're reviewing that?
So traffic analysis for a warehouse is different from, say, an office building, and it's entirely, the trips that are to and from the building are entirely different. And it depends on what kind of warehouse it is. There generally is more truck traffic to warehouses than there is to an office building.
Absolutely.
Certainly,
I
there's some deliveries that can be made, but generally, if it's.
There's also a huge difference between one type of warehouse and another. I think the warehouses were intended by Weyerhaeuser to be for storage, for light assembly, something completely different. And I think I've heard proposals about bringing somebody like Uline in or Cisco in, which would make multiple trips.
Yeah, and
So-
if it goes above and beyond what we assumed in these analyses, then we would adjust accordingly.
Okay, so what's the baseline that we're assuming right now? I guess, how many trips per day?
I couldn't tell you. off the top of my
Okay,
head.
all right.
But we're assuming a certain scenario, and again, if the application is different from what our traffic engineers assumed, then they be responsible to come back with different data.
Okay.
Councilmember Moore?
Thank you so much. Brian, so if I understand it correctly, they've submitted some paperwork. We don't know exactly what this warehouse is going to be. You're putting in a lot of effort and time, playing off of assumptions that we really don't know, and then they could come back and say, oh, it's going to be a gasoline warehouse, for example. It's a bizarre example, but,
Yeah.
And then you have to go back and restart all that. Does that seem normal? Because, I guess maybe another question I can ask with that is, I'm kind of curious, your whole community development department, percentage-wise, how much time are you guys spending on this?
So there's a couple of questions in there.
Yeah.
One is it normal to review an application when we don't know who the tenant is? And that's normal. When we're in a building like this, it's often that we don't know the building. Again, if they come back with something as different as a gasoline, then we would, let me assure the public that we would adjust the analysis accordingly to make sure that it meets whatever we decided at the time. The second is, how much time are we spending on this? We have, in community development, we have 2 devoted staff to this particular project, not including of all the support staff. In public works, there's at least, in development services, there's 1, in traffic, there's 1. We have a wetlands consultant, granted that the applicant pays for, but it is something that we don't retain at city. You know, we don't have an employee that specializes in wetlands biology, and so we contract with them to do wetlands analysis for us. So there's a number of employees and time spent both in and out of house, so to speak.
But looking at this at the 50-foot level, 15% of the time of your whole department, or is that not?
I wouldn't say it's that much.
Yeah?
I would not say it's that much.
Oh, it's not that much?
No.
Okay. Okay, interesting. Thank you.
Okay, I think we've got more of the presentation to go, so
Yeah.
let's
So this is a different perspective of Warehouse A. So north is now to the right, south is to the left. This is Warehouse A, a little bit more detail. Here's Weyerhaeuser Way, or excuse me, this is 336th. No, excuse me, this is still Weyerhaeuser Way, and then this is Highway 18 right here. Weyerhaeuser B is right here, just to the south, more closely with the Weyerhaeuser Way, Highway 18 interchange. Warehouse B is also under the use process 3 process with SEPA. It was submitted in September of last year, as I mentioned, and we are still under review at this point. So again, I'm going to leave all that information up there for viewers that want to go back and view it, or if you want to copy the presentation. So the business park, this is the most recent application that has come in. This is the signs that you see up right now at the north end of the campus. I think there's one of the driveways, and there's another one down here by the roundabout, indicating that there's a proposal that's been submitted, and that if you want to comment, to get those submitted to the city. This is over 1 million square feet between the 3 of them. This building in the middle is the existing technology center. And again, we just got this in November, and we just barely deemed it complete, so we're just getting started on this one. 3 buildings is more complex than 1. In Warehouse A, as I mentioned, we've been doing that for 2 years now. So process 4, this is a little bit different. This one, once we get to a point where we believe that we would issue a decision, staff does not issue it. It goes to the hearing examiner as a recommendation, stating where we believe it should be approved or denied, or approved with conditions, depending on what we get to at that point. That decision by the hearing examiner can also be appealed, and that would go to Superior Court. And again, there's the state SEPA process, the decision that we issue, and then there's the decision that we also issue based on our local code, the use process 4. So more specifically, the SEPA determination, once we issue that, there's a 14-day, or once it's posted, there's a 14-day comment period, and then when it's issued, there's a 3-week appeal period. For anyone to what it basically does is it puts a timeout on the process while we issue the rest of the local decision. And then for process 3, that goes to the hearing examiner. So the differences between process 3 and process 4, on the left are ones that are the same for both. There's a pre-application meeting before you submit anything to City Hall. You come and we sit down and we talk about it. And we provide the applicant with information that could be useful to them in making their application more complete up front and more smoother in the process. And then once it's submitted, we review it based on our codes. And I've mentioned both the local code and the zoning that is unique to the property, which we call the concomitant agreement. And then we do the back and forth, like I mentioned before, where we say this is incomplete, or we need some additional information, and we hand it back to the applicant, and then they resubmit based on our feedback. So on the right, the difference is, process 3 is issued by the director. There is an appeal. The process would be to the hearing examiner, whereas process 4, the decision, the first decision is made by the hearing examiner, and then it's appealable to Superior Court. And I think I already covered this. Again, for process 3, you can appeal it to the hearing examiner. The people who can appeal it under process 3, so that, and for reference, this would be either warehouse A. Those that could appeal it are the applicant or any person who submitted written comments or information, any person who specifically requested a copy of the decision, or the city. And then process 4, this is and this is the business park, the 3 buildings by the technology center. Process 4 is a little bit different, and you can submit comments from the beginning up until the hearing itself. So if anyone has any comments or concerns along the way of the process for reviewing of the business park, they could submit those to City Hall at any time. But those would need to be to the Community Development Department is where you submit it, not to the City Council. And you can email it to this email address, planning@cityoffederalway.com. And again, if you want a copy of this presentation, you can also email that, send a message to that email requesting a copy of it if you want this information. I won't get into this too much. It talks about timeframes, but typically, process 3 is 9 months. Process 4 might be a little bit longer because generally process 4 applications are a little bit more complex. And then the bottom one talks about things that could get in the way of a speedy decision, including the complexity of the project, the size, the thoroughness of the materials, and so forth, which we've all experienced on Warehouse A. And so all of these have been contributed to some of that's taken a little bit longer. Like I said, I've not seen many land use decisions that take 2 years to get through. And then I usually put this up in any presentation that I'm giving on the IRG property. This is right out of the concomitant agreement. This is for reference, the concomitant agreement is the agreement between the city and Weyerhaeuser in 1994. Upon the city annexing Weyerhaeuser, they came up with this agreement. And this is on the first page. It says the property, referring to the IRG property. The property is a unique site both in terms of its development capacity and its natural features. Weyerhaeuser desires to develop its property with maximum flexibility, which will ensure optimal development while preserving the unique natural features of the site. And I've spoken to passionate individuals on both sides of the argument, and when they read this, it clearly says you're supposed to preserve anything and not develop 1 square inch. And on the other side, people have said it says maximum flexibility development. It's 400 acres. We're developing 40. Surely this meets the intent. So, I mean, you see arguments on both sides on this paragraph alone, because the concomitant agreement then gives details of how this plays out. So, anyway, I'll leave that up here. I think the next one's just the questions. Yeah. So I'll leave this up for any additional questions by the council.
All right, Councilmember Moore.
Thank you so much. Brian, thank you for your presentation. I appreciate it, and certainly appreciate you jumped right in when you became Director of Community Development. So thank you for that. You know, I'm kind of curious, looking at the bigger picture. Dow Constantine just came up with the where he's proposing legislation to protect King County's most vulnerable forests areas. And we all know that the Washington Historic for Preservation land, they've listed this as most endangered. We've heard these things, and I'm assuming you know what I'm talking about when I mentioned Dow Constantine's press conference that he did back on the 23rd. What does that mean for Weyerhaeuser?
For the Weyerhaeuser or the property or IRG?
For Weyerhaeuser property.
The property, okay. For the property, a group purchased the party for, I don't remember how much, it was in the tens of millions of dollars.
70.
$70 million, assuming certain potential for the property. That did not, for them, include doing nothing. They didn't buy $70 million worth of property to sit on it. The conservation effort, as I understand it, is to strike that balance, that the property has high value, but it needs to be preserved. And when it's preserved, that requires money. And so that's my understanding of the conservation effort for the Weyerhaeuser property.
Yep. And we've got Forterra engaged, and there's all kinds of efforts ongoing, and all kinds of meetings going on where IRG is meeting with Forterra. My staff and I have met with Forterra and IRG, and so there's been a lot of preservation efforts that have been focused on the two gardens in the west side of North Lake, and obviously, community development needs to do its work.
But in terms of Dow Constantine's latest proposal, what does that mean for Weyerhaeuser? I guess I'm not, does it mean nothing, or?
The property is bound by the
IRG.
concomitant agreement, and
Right.
that's what we're bound by.
Okay.
All right, council, any other questions? Okay, Brian, thank you very much. And of course, anybody who wants a copy of this, I wanted to make sure that everybody could get sort of a bird's eye view of where we're at right now as a status check. If you would like the copy of this, I don't know if we have any at the front desk, but
We don't, but planning at cityoffederalway.com.
okay, planning at cityofederalway.com.
Call me. I'm happy
Okay.
to send it to you.
Very good. Okay, now moving on, this was part of my emerging issues and report. That was at the, that picture right there for the screensaver was at the Break the Chains 5K. That was on May 19th. It was a great, just a great turnout, and obviously this is about Federal Way Coalition Against Trafficking, a great organization, and we've got a number of council members there and myself, and it was just a great event, great opportunity for the community to come out. Blue Puppy Days was on 5/19, and that was a great event as well, as was Touch a Truck on May 19th. We've had a busy May. Now to talk about the Federal Way Youth Forum this coming Monday, next Monday at 6:30 p.m. Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we have the Youth Forum coming up. It's for all the community members, particularly families, parents, youth, of course. And so this was a total collaborative effort between students at all of our high schools in Federal Way, as well as the Federal Way Youth Action Team and a number of other groups, including Rugged Genius Media Group. So basically what it is, it's going to be a facilitated student panel talking about the issues that relate to our kids. And they'll be talking about a number of issues, bringing up a number of questions. And so I highly encourage everyone to attend. I think it's going to be great to have community members ask questions to the youth about what they would like to see in our city and our communities. We'll also have a resource fair beginning at 6 p.m. So you can attend that and get more information around what the youth are doing in terms of what's happening at their schools as well. And there'll also be a voter registration for our youth. So we have this year the Washington Voting Rights Act was passed, so youth can pre-register at 16 and 17 years old, which is pretty cool to vote. And we'll also have a number of organizations doing civic engagement workshops for our youth. So it's going to be a total collaborative effort between organizations and our kids. So hope to see everyone there, 6:30 at Decatur next Monday.
Great, thank you very much, Councilmember. Okay, now for the most important part of the evening, citizen comment. You've got 3 minutes unless you've got, I see some have signed in with multiple friends present to give them 5 minutes, and I'll let the city clerk know when I see one of those. So I'll go ahead and name off a number of these, and we can just kind of get on deck here. So we've got Sue Peterson, Ron Beckerdite, Dana Holloway, Sharon Armstrong, Carol Duval, Vicky Kirshner. Sue?
Mayor Farrell, Deputy Mayor, and council members. First of all, Mayor, I would like to commend you on your statements made to the Puget Sound Regional Council on behalf of the many citizens who are impacted by the airplane noise and emissions. I'm really discouraged by the fact that it's been a year and a half since your task force formed to produce a report, and there's no report. Perhaps you have people on this task force who are not able to produce the report, or you don't like what the answers are coming out. I don't know which it is, but we need a report, because the CTAC is right now in the process of forming their master plan. It's going to be big, it's going to be ugly, it's going to be noisy. There's going to be more cargo, there's going to be more emissions, which we don't even know now. We do know it causes heart disease, lung disease. There is some evidence that emissions can pass through into the brain. That can cause dementia. I'm living with that right now. I know that it is a danger to be living under those airplanes. I live in Marine Hills, as do many here. It is 24/7 of constant airplane noise. There's no way to get away from it. You can't be in your yard, you can't eat on your deck, you can't have a conversation with your neighbor. We need answers to this. And I know you've talked to the Puget Sound Regional Council, but we, the citizens, don't know about that unless it's published. So please, let's get something going, because all the other cities are working on it, except Federal Way. We're waiting. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Sue. And actually, I'm going to have Yarden come up now and give you a brief update on where we're at, give everybody an update. Well, there's a lot of work going on. This report's in progress. It's just about ready to go. It's a fairly in-depth process, but we're involved in multiple different levels. Actually, on so many different levels, I'm going to have Yarden, as you know, Yarden, our resident expert on many things. But you're right. I've been telling Yarden we need that report. But he's going to tell us right now where we're at with that and what different levels we're working on. And you're right as well in that, you know, it's one thing to work on a regional level. It's one thing to work with it, but we need to make sure that we're keeping the community involved. I've talked about this at several junctures, but let's have Yarden talk, and I'll be more mindful to make sure that we give more updates periodically. With that, Yarden?
Yeah, I think what Ms. Teglin-Peterson said was it's really good and important question. So a number of things have been worked on. First of all, as Ms. Teglin-Peterson said, the Mayor Farrell did make sure that the Puget Sound Regional Council scoping for the baseline study that they're going to be engaging in over the next year and a half, starting in July and going through December of 19, does include specifically a recognition of the need to study the airport capacity issue, as well as impacts on surrounding communities. As been stated, it's not a siting study. When they come to the end of that study, and the port itself does not currently have modeling that allows them to reach the level of flights that they are saying they're projecting by 2034. They don't have any modeling beyond 2027. So if Puget Sound Regional Council ends up showing that there is a problem with the capacity there, then the next step would be for the state legislature and governor to look at potentially siting a new airport, but that's not what that study's about. Secondly, in terms of impacts with on local communities, I think that people are aware that, and we had publicized this, that with the city council's endorsement, the city council back in February, the Federal Way City Council did endorse a resolution, or actually unanimously passed a resolution to support the budget proviso that was sponsored by Representative Peliciotti here, that originally they were seeking $500,000 in funding. It was passed at $300,000 in funding. It's matching funding right now, and therefore the 6 cities from South King County of Federal Way, Burien, Des Moines, SeaTac, Tukwila, and Normandy Park have to match whatever funding it is. The city of SeaTac has $250,000 earmarked. They're hoping that the other 5 cities can come up with as much as possible, up to a total of $800,000, including the state match, to have the broadest possible study. Mayor Farrell has delegated me to participate in meetings over the last month for about every couple weeks. I've been meeting with the city managers and economic development leaders of those cities to determine how we're going to match this. And Mayor Farrell at this point has indicated that again, ultimately City Council makes the final determination on budgeting, but what I've indicated to that group is that Mayor Farrell is going to be recommending that the City of Federal Way put in approximately $30,000 to that study. Ultimately, it'll be City Council's decision in the final analysis, but that will be Mayor Farrell's recommendation, and so we've been working. I have another meeting scheduled on that in a week from next Monday, and they hope to finalize that and get that study going. It'll apparently be the first study that has been done that will explore directly the impacts to local communities. It is not funded by the port, and therefore it's very much been supported by a lot of the activist community. People also know that the University of Washington was funded a study last year in 2017 on, I think, on part of what Ms. Tecklin-Peterson was talking about with the health effects of nanoparticles. That is in the works. I believe that in the next legislative session there may be some talk to continue funding that, a second phase of that. And I know the Marine Hills group here had talked to Representative Pliciotti about that last night. Representative Pliciotti is also looking at reintroducing legislation that was on the city's legislative agenda that Mayor Farrell recommended. That was on for last year, and I actually testified in favor of it down in Olympia in January, that would extend the mitigation zone in which the port can pay for mitigation to include the city of Federal Way. I represented Mayor Farrell and the City Council in their legislative agenda testifying in favor of that. Unfortunately, it did not move this year. I know Representative Piciotti tried, but it did not. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, yes, the report is due to be out. I will say that I did go to the meeting on this Sustainable Airport Master Plan, and Ms. Tecklin-Peterson is right. It's a major project that they do expect will require an environmental impact statement as part of the environmental review. So I was been pressing them for the last few months at the request of several of our task force members to give me a clear indication of what the timeline is. They finally do have a timeline as of last week. The public scoping will be starting on July 23rd and will go for 60 days. It'll go through September 21st. The week of September 10th will be a public comment period, actual formal meetings with a court reporter that anyone can participate.
Yarden,
and yeah.
Just for everybody listening, what do you mean by scoping? Can you explain what that is?
So the first question, and to be honest, some of the other people might be a little more qualified than I am to say, but the essential idea is that they have to do a whole environmental analysis. So the first question is, what exactly will they be analyzing? What's the scope of that? And that will be something that will be determined during the scoping period. They have a lot of different areas that they can analyze, and some of them could be what Ms. Tecklin-Peterson was talking about health effects. It can be about noise impacts. It can be what they will analyze, basically. Then they have to actually do the analysis.
Correct. So right now, the scoping of that study starts on July 23rd.
Correct.
So to get to the heart of Ms. Peterson's concern and question was the report of our task force, task force.
Right. So the task force and I have been working on it. There's been essentially it's three members particularly that have been working on drafting it. One member has completed a section. I have not seen it yet. It's not something that's been publicized even to me yet, but his section, from what I understand from talking to him, is pretty much completed. A second task force member, his section is last time I talked to him, was about 75% completed. And then there's a third section that I'm working on with another task force member, and I've had a meeting with her, and I basically need to find the time to complete that, get it done, set that aside, and then we'll have a complete meeting, and it'll be out well in time for the city, first for the mayor's review, and then for the city council's review, long before the July 23rd scoping starts. So that, and because I think the mayor's review it first, then it has to, then city council.
So that's the key juncture. The key juncture is when the scoping of that study starts on July 23rd, we as a community need to be ready. And what I've been trying to do with this is navigate our community through this multi-layered, multi-jurisdictional issue and make sure that we are applying our political force and a political voice at just the right fulcrum point and making sure that our voice is heard. It's being heard on a regional level. It's being heard, once we get a report done. And the report, frankly, is internal use to advise myself and the council on strategic steps. Obviously, that one of the strategic steps is what do we want the study to contain? How do we want to proceed? What is the best way to look at this? I've been looking at this for several years. What we don't want to do, and one of the things I've been trying to do, is not just make political statements or issue press releases and flail at the machinery of these regional and national FAA, these federal agencies. We need to be very strategic about how we're proceeding and in making sure that we leverage our partnerships in the region, and that's exactly what we're doing. That's why we've got at the start, there's a number of different committees, as you're aware, Susan, and one of them is the START committee, where I appointed our former chair of the task force, John Reesing, who's been going to these regional meetings.
And Chris Hall.
And Chris Hall, who's an expert on these things. So it really is a matter of where I think, just to be candid with everybody, where I think the real keys to the legs of the stool, so to speak, is this environmental process. And that's what we're really focusing in on. That's why I met with Congressman Adam Smith, talking about getting legislation about studies on this microparticles, on the health effects of emissions, and really thinking about how we're going to address this.
And Mayor Farrell, I also want to point out that I think I did send this to people, if not I can, that Mayor Farrell also co-signed a letter with all the local mayors and the port director to the director of the FAA, urging them to, as quickly as possible, immediately essentially, to spend $2 million in funding that was authorized in the last congressional omnibus bill for the FAA for the first time to employ community outreach people. That's required. And in addition, Mayor Farrell also wrote a letter to Congressman Smith urging him to do the same thing and pressure the FAA to do that, to point that immediately. I also say that one of the recommendations in the report will be there is some efforts about activism on the Sustainable Airport Master Plan, because environmental review, once scoping is done, that's just the beginning. September 21st, that the scoping is closed, then they will be doing studying for a year. Then there'll be another public comment period in the fall of 2019, so another year and a quarter away. And I know there's been some efforts from local cities to have someone lined up that will be able to help represent the cities on that. And I know that's one of the things that the task force is going to be recommending on. So there's a lot of things, like Mayor Farrell had said, that are being juggled in this and that have to be considered.
But the two things that absolutely mattered is that the air traffic in this community is going to increase probably by about 40% in the next 20 years. We've got to keep our eye on that ball, and these studies and all these things are churning time. And what we need to make sure of is, and this is why with this other study that I made sure when the Puget Sound Regional Committee was discussing this, that we talked about capacity. At some point, this airport, with its limited size, is going to run out of room. And we as a region need to be thinking about a second airport. And that's what, when we say capacity, that's what we mean. There is, at some point, this tank fills. And it's starting to overflow, and it's affecting our neighborhoods, and it's affecting the investments that people are having. And the second piece that we got added was the effect on regional communities. And so that's us. And so that's what we're working on. So thank you, Susan, for bringing this up. And I wanted to make sure Yarden's working on it almost every day. He goes, or at least every week, he's get a regional meeting or a series of emails. And so, no, we're working for you. I think what we need to do is do a better job of making sure we have these regular reports, let people know, and plug people in our community where they could show up to these meetings and have their voices heard. So, Yarden, let's talk about this. Let's start having you as a regular update, maybe every other meeting, maybe once a month, talk about airport issues.
Very good.
Thank you. You guys, thank you for your indulgence. That took a long time, sorry. Ron Beckerdite.
Yes. Mayor, Deputy Mayor, Council, fellow citizens, good evening, and thank you for the opportunity. My name is Ron Beckerdite. I live on North Lake, which is right on the heart of the Weyerhaeuser campus, and thank you for bringing that up tonight, Brian. That was, I enjoyed some of the things, some of it kind of concerned me. I wish that the people we elected actually had something to say about what happens to us, but apparently you don't in this situation. And that doesn't make sense to me, but I'm sure there's a reason for it. Some of your questions were good, and thank you very much. You were asking the right ones. My main concern continues to be traffic. Brian kind of avoided the numbers. He probably doesn't really know them, but you figure 425,000 square feet of warehouse on the south end. Going to be a lot of trucks. What I hear, the estimate's about 400 a day. I think that's probably low. Is it a 24-hour operation? We don't know, because it'll be all night long. I live about a 3-wood and a pitching wedge from that place. I really don't want to hear doors slam all night long and backup lights going beep, 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 beep. Right. And I don't know if anybody's thinking about that or what's going on there. Not to mention, have you been to I-18 and I-5 between 2:30 and 6:30 in the afternoon? Let's put about 800 trucks out there. You talk about a goat rope. That will be absolutely nuts. I mean, those trucks aren't going to have any place to go, and pretty soon, where are they going to go? Right through our neighborhood to get out the other side. Oh, but there's a 1 million square foot warehouse down there now, so you can't get out that way either, which means we can't get out. I hope that whoever's looking at the traffic situation there has their eyes wide open and not just, oh, well, it'll work. There's not that many ways in and out of that property. There's just not. That's probably my biggest concern at this time is that traffic. We don't have a lot, not knowing who's going in there. We don't know it's going to be a fish plant, so we can't talk about carbon monoxide and all the other things that go with it. But let's keep our eye on the ball and make sure we don't flood that place and make it. It's a beautiful place. I like to watch the Eagles and the Osprey every day. I don't know if they'll still be there. So that's my concerns, and also. This is a while back, and I wasn't here, I've been out of town. Just real quick.
30 seconds.
IRG said they were gonna take care of the environment and make things right and participate with us. And they trimmed trees on the other side of the lake and over across the street. It looked like they did it with dynamite. Somebody took a bush hog in there and just splintered everything, and tree branches sitting out with splintered forks. It looked terrible. I wish they would do a much better job than that, because the area deserves it. Okay? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ron. Dana Holloway. Dana?
Good evening, Dana Holloway. I'm a proud member of the Save Weyerhaeuser Campus Organization. It was that organization that got me involved in attending these city council meetings and speaking, which I'm getting a little bit better at. Most of my comments have been about the importance of saving this property from it being an industrial development. And that was clear back in 2016, almost 2 years. Most of my comments ended with me choking up or crying because of my frustration of what was occurring and knowing it was wrong. We are still here, and we are still committed to that goal to keep it from being an industrial development. We have read and studied the numerous documents that identified issues and reasons for the city to deny the proposed IRG projects. The city of Federal Way only has one chance to get this right, because once the forest is cut, the land is bulldozed, the wetlands are filled, the land is destroyed forever, and impacting downstream areas beyond the property and outside of Federal Way. There is no do-over. The decision made whether to allow or reject this corporate park zone land from becoming an industrial zone of massive warehouses will be your legacy of the city, of the mayor, the city council, the staff, and the decision will be known not only in Federal Way, but at the state level and at the national level. Everybody will know what Federal Way does. For anyone interested in continuing in politics, what happens to the former Weyerhaeuser campus will either be a highlight to point to or something that will be used against you so you don't have the opportunity to repeat the bad decisions that resulted in the destruction of this unique urban green space. I implore you to reject all applications by IRG until a comprehensive approach can be done to evaluate the cumulative effects of the individual projects, including environmental impact statement for the entire campus. This decision is in your hands. This is your legacy. Please do not allow this property to be destroyed. Thank you.
Sharon Armstrong. And then Carol Duvall, and then Vicki Kirshner.
Good evening, everyone.
My name is Sharon Armstrong. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I'm here as an individual in support of Center Stage Theater that is currently housed, as you know, and I'm sure I've heard, at the Dumas Bay location and the Knutson Family Theater, and I apologize if I didn't say that exactly right. I'm going to say really quickly that I'm speaking as an individual based on my personal outside perspective and also my recent inside perspective. So from the outside, my family and I have lived within a 5-mile radius of this building for more than 10 years. I'm a single parent. I'm raising 2 boys, the youngest of which is 14, is a freshman in high school. He went to Panther Lake Elementary School. We've been a thriving family within this community the whole time, and it's really been a blessing for us to have opportunities to come together with other families within the community in the city of Federal Way. I've been working with kids, families, youth, and communities throughout King and Pierce County for over 20 years, trying to help make a positive impact and make a difference in their lives, schools, community organizations, and so forth. What I've learned is that kids and youth who stay involved in programs like the arts stand a much higher chance of being successful as individuals and contributing members of communities. I know this firsthand because my own boys have been successful in that way, and also because of the kids that I've served over the last 20 years. So for me personally, I see that from an outside lens. From an inside perspective, I was in a meeting at the Dumas Bay Center in my professional life, which is separate from the theater, and saw the signs for Center Stage. And I knew about Center Stage just through reputation. Over several years, always a positive reputation, but didn't really know much about how it was, the partnership between Center Stage and Dumas Bay. But I was there for a conference for my work and saw the stage. I walked into the office of Center Stage to find out about auditions because I do have a love for the arts. I was welcomed and embraced right away and was fortunate enough to participate in their most recent production. My participation in that recent production meant that my 2 boys got to attend twice the performance. 2 grown African-American males who chose to come 2 times to see this production, in addition to more than 20 other people from the expanding areas outside of Federal Way. It would be a huge mistake to disenfranchise this theater from this community. There's a growing tension, as you know, between violence and those kinds of things with the desire for community to come together in positive ways. Center Stage Theater is representing that in a huge way. It would be a huge mistake to make them have to figure out another location. So I just implore you to consider allowing them to remain where they are. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Carol Duvall, and then Vicki Kirshner.
My name is Carol Duvall, and I want to thank you, Mayor Farrell, and council members and friends of Federal Way. And additional thanks to you, Mayor Farrell, because I was the person that you went back and forth 3 times email regarding Center Stage, so I appreciate that. I know you have hundreds of things on your plate, and so that you took the time to do that means a lot to me. I am a supporter of the arts, and I live and work in Federal Way. I believe that Center Stage is an asset to this community. There have been many who have spoken about the programs that Trista and Angela have implemented and will be implementing next season if they have a space to call home. In addition to these programs, I have another reason that I would like to see Center Stage remain at the Knutson Theater. The artistic director, Trista Duval Wilkinson, is my high-energy, visionary daughter. When the former artistic director stepped down, he had pretty much promised the job to another gentleman who was waiting in the wings to take it over when Alan left. In the meantime, Angela had worked a bit with Trista and thought she would make a great artistic director. When the board finally did meet Trista, they were won over by her energy, drive, and vision for not just the theater, but also for the city of Federal Way. So here we are, less than 12 months later. Season tickets sales are 5 times higher, single ticket sales 15% higher on top of that. The programs they offer include their Page to the Stage program that works with Todd Beamer and hopefully more high schools in this coming season, a high school internship program available to all Federal Way high school students, scholarships for high school students to see theater free of charge, as well as programs ready to launch next season to benefit other underserved groups in our community. If you were to put a dollar amount on each of these programs, you would see that they are quite valuable both to the community and to the young people they serve. Center Stage has many dedicated volunteers. They employ about 95 artists a season, actors, musicians, set designers, builders, costume designers, choreographers, sound and light technicians. They also employ 1 full-time and 3 part-time people. They pay some utilities, janitorial, and routine maintenance, which totals about $25,000 a year. I understand if the city can no longer pay the management fee, although I'd be lax in not asking that you bring them down in increments over the next 3 years instead of taking it away all at once. But if that is not possible, I am asking that the mayor and council please make the decision to give them the Knutson Theater space for their 5 productions a year free of charge for the next 3 years. Angela and Trista have done amazing work in less than 12 months. I personally have watched Trista pour her heart and soul into this job that she loves so much. I have watched her month after month work double the hours that she is paid for, to work at a pay rate that most with a bachelor's degree would not work for. I have listened to her ideas on how to build influence with the school system in order to better serve the students of Federal Way, not only the students whose parents can afford theater camp, but to all students. I have seen and heard the excitement in her as programs come together, and have seen and heard that same excitement about programs that are now in the planning stages. It makes me proud to see her work hard for so much more in addition to great theater. I'm asking that you don't pull the rug out from under these 2 talented women who want nothing but to keep the theater strong so Federal Way has a presence in the surrounding arts community and to build programs that serve the city of Federal Way. Having to pay rental fees, even at non-profit prices, would mean that Center Stage would need to find another home, perhaps outside Federal Way, as there really isn't anywhere else in the city that would be adequate. Think for just a moment what a world without the arts would be like. No music, no theater, no movies, no television, only news on your TV and your car radio. Sounds pretty boring, if you ask me. I know Center Stage is not the theater to the world, but it's part of my world and part of the world of many others in the community. Losing Center Stage would be a loss to both the arts community, the arts in our community, and to the many youth in our community who now and in the future will call Center Stage their family away from home. I'm asking...
Thank you, Carol.
Okay.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay.
Carol, you're really good. It was really hard to get a word in. Great job. Thank you. All right, Vicki Kirschner.
Greetings, Mayor and City Council members, everyone in attendance. My name is Vicki Kirchner. I'm a 23-year resident here in Federal Way, but I'm speaking on behalf of World Vision, my employer for 38 years this evening. I'm speaking on behalf of World Vision in regards to the proposed Green Line Business Park development that consists of plans to build 5 warehouses totaling 1.5 million square feet on what was formerly known as the Weyerhaeuser campus. The concerns that I initially expressed in my August of 2016 email to the city regarding the then proposed fish processing and freezer development, and followed up on in my appearance shortly after at a city council meeting, still remain, but now they are of even greater concern to the World Vision management and staff, given the size and scope of the total proposed Green Line Business Park development. Traffic volume increase is of major concern to us. As you are aware, World Vision's main headquarters consists of 2 owned buildings located in Weyerhaeuser Way and 344th Way. These 2 buildings house approximately 1,000 full and part-time staff that are World Vision staff and 2 tenants that comprise of another 200 employees. Given the close proximity of the 5 proposed warehouses, especially warehouses A and B just to the north of us across Highway 18, World Vision staff and our tenants will be impacted with their daily commute to and from work as hundreds of semi-trucks navigate from both Highway 18 and I-5. The surface streets, as we've already heard this evening, leading to and from both Highway 18 and I-5 are already clogged. Add semi-trucks, 400, 700, 800 trucks a day. I don't care what numbers you use. What happens now is staff purposely propose to do their shopping, their lunchtime food eating at restaurants. They're going east and they're going south of Federal Way. Add this proposed project and all of the warehouses that you're going to put in here, and you will drive traffic further away. There are 140 of us staff, myself included, who live on the west side of Federal Way. I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to get to and from work. The other issue would be environmental. If IRG's underbrush clearing that was discussed earlier of the tech center is any indication of what is to come of the proposed warehouses, World Vision has grave concerns regarding not only the aesthetic look of the development, but the impact to the wetlands, the wildlife, the existing watershed, and impact to the stormwater runoff. When World Vision developed this process in 1995, we went through SEPA, shoreline, wetland intrusion, land surface modification before we even broke ground. Until both a comprehensive traffic study based on realistic warehouse traffic studies are done and an environmental impact statement on all 5 properties, all proposed development, we are requesting that at World Vision staff have asked that the Green Line Business Park applications and general permit review be reviewed seriously. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicki. Okay, Cindy Flanagan for 5 minutes, who's speaking for 5 individuals that are listed here. Deborah Hanson on behalf of Lori Seacrest for 5 minutes, again with the listed folks, and then Judy Zerligen.
Good evening, everyone. First, thank you, Director Davis, for your updates on IRG, and Mayor for making sure we have time to address this important issue, and also for Council for your questions. I'm here tonight to talk about the SEPA process and IRG's 3 pending applications, as well as the status of Warehouse A. Excuse me. The anchoring issue that lies at hand is the fact that IRG's 3 proposals are a classic case of what the U.S. Army Corps defines as piecemealing, which is done by isolating components of a larger development into smaller parcels so that it doesn't trigger the need for a Corps or state permit. Well, cumulatively, the project well exceeds the threshold for a permit. By strategically applying for 3 land use proposals and first submitting applications for the buildings with the smallest environmental impacts, IRG's application slipped through the city's system where Warehouse A's stormwater impacts to the downstream, especially the Hylabos, are not triggering a response to that the city is determining needs an EIS from the Department of Ecology and the Washington Department of Fisheries and Wildlife. Had the Green Line Business Park application been submitted first, none of the following applications would have been able to be reviewed without an EIS and in-depth studies of the downstream and the groundwater. This is wrong. SEPA allows the city the right to review cumulative environmental impacts of similar projects. Under SEPA, IRG's 3 pending applications are similar applications that must be considered in a single environmental document. The City of Federal Way has adopted most of the Washington SEPA rule, including this section. Proposals or parts of proposals that are related to each other closely enough to be, in effect, a single course of action shall be evaluated in the same environmental document. Furthermore, when preparing environmental documents on similar actions, agencies may find it useful to define the proposals in one of the following ways. A, geographically, which may include actions occurring in the same general location, such as a body of water, region, or metropolitan area. Or B, generically, which may include actions which have relevant similarities, such as common timing, impacts, alternatives, methods of implementation, environmental media, or subject matter. The city must conduct consolidated land use and environmental review of the 3 pending applications based on the following. A, 1 owner, which is IRG. B, 3 currently pending applications. Their construction timelines run the same period. C, same zone for all 3 parcels. All are in CP1, which doesn't exist anywhere else in the city. It only applies to the campus. And D, because of SEPA guidelines, which geographically the same area, common timing of projects, common impacts, common alternatives, and common methods of implementation. We really appreciate the amount of work the Community Development Department has done reviewing Warehouse A and B, and now thank you in advance for your work on the business park. It's going to be a lot of reading and a lot of analysis. We know because we've been through it with the public comment. Anyway, in conclusion, I ask, because currently the downstream analysis of Warehouse A is only a 1/4 mile downstream of the project site, Are the WDFW and the DOE aware of the Warehouse A development and the alteration in stormwater flows that will go downstream to the Hylabos? The Hylabos is listed on the DOE's 303D list for its sensitive water. It is categorized as a Class 5, the most serious level for pollution. According to the DOE, any impacts to the Hylabos must be documented and assessed. Before Warehouse A is permitted, we ask the city reach out to the DOE and WDFW to fully understand the impacts to the Hylabos. Thank you.
Thank you. And Deborah, before you get started, so if you could make sure that we get a written response to the questions that Cindy asked. If you could, she asked about DOE and whether they're aware of some of those. Let's talk about that. Let's make sure we get a written response out. Okay, thank you. And we'll get it out not only to her, but the group over there. All right, Deborah Hanson.
Mayor Farrell, before I begin and before the timer starts, I want to say that I'm speaking for Lori Seacrest. My goal is to get this done in 5 minutes, but I'm reading someone else's comments.
Okay. I'll help.
Okay, thanks.
I'm kidding.
Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, Council, staff, friends, neighbors. My name is Lori Seacrest, proud president of Save Weyerhaeuser Campus grassroots organization, existing to protect, preserve the community and natural values of the former Weyerhaeuser campus. It is regretful that I must write in my comments tonight rather than stand in person. Once again, my paying job finds me out of town this week. I apologize in advance should my comments be contradictory to anything Brian Davis has already discussed during his report earlier this evening. Over the past several weeks since the announcement that the Green Line Business Park application was deemed complete, I have read and reread thousands of pages of documents that the average person, such as myself, should never have to read. I am grateful to be surrounded by a team of experts in land use law, traffic, hydrology, wetland, watershed habitat, forestry, architecture, and others that have assisted our organization in navigating through these documents. Several things about the IRG proposal, including Warehouse A and B and the new Green Line Business Park, cause me and our thousands of supporters great concern. The most significant impact of the combined proposals is the traffic and transportation. The scale of the development, with over 1.5 million feet of warehouses, bringing over 6,000 new daily trips, including a significant share of semi-truck trips, 20% or over 800, to an area with a modest street network and a highway interchange already known to have capacity constraints and poor traffic operations, will bring this region to a standstill and is inconceivable. These projects individually and will also impact downstream water resources, including the Hylabos Stream, Milton's East Hylabos Ravine, Fife's Lower Hylabos Nature Park, and associated wetlands and habitat. The Green Line Business Park alone will total 1.4 million square feet of impervious surface. The long-term effect this proposed development will have on the health of the North Lake watershed and the lake itself is very concerning. The noise and air quality reports submitted by IRGs state that there will be insignificant increases in levels of noise and air pollution compared to a no-build scenario. How on God's green earth can 1.5 million square feet of warehouses and over 1.4 million square feet of impervious surface, clear-cutting over 170 acres of significant trees that will bring over 6,000 daily cars and semi-trucks to this area, not be considered significant? Absolutely nothing, I repeat, absolutely nothing about these proposals is consistent with the Federal Way Comprehensive Plan, which states the city will limit growth outside the city center to areas that are already urbanized, protect the environmental sensitive areas, retain open space, enhance recreational opportunities, conserve fish and wildlife habitat, increase access to natural resource lands and water, and develop parks and recreational facilities, protect the environment and enhance the state's high quality of life, including air and water quality and the availability of water. Identify and encourage the preservation of land, sites, and structures that have historical or archaeological significance. Create an attractive, welcoming, and functioning built environment. Use development standards and design guidelines to maintain neighborhood character and ensure compatibility with surrounding use. Preserve and protect Federal Way's single-family neighborhoods. Require development to be compatible with the well integrated into its surroundings and adjacent zones through site and building design and development standards that reduce or eliminate land use conflict and nuisance impacts. Ensure project aesthetics and improve vehicular and pedestrian traffic flow and safety. It is apparent that the City of Federal Way cannot or will not stop this madness. Please know that the Save Weyerhaeuser Campus organization will. We will do this by ensuring that the city conduct a combined and consolidated SEPA review of all three proposals, Warehouse A, Warehouse B, and the Green Line Business Park. The environmental impacts of each have a direct correlation with one and the other and must not be piecemealed. All three have a common owner, common timing.
Let's do 30 more seconds.
Common timing, common geography, common zoning, and more significantly, we would like to also continue to encourage and work with the city for Terra and IRG to discuss alternatives. The residents of Federal Way deserve a development that carries stewardship legacy of Weyerhaeuser into the future, but that preserves the trails and forests that we have enjoyed for nearly 5 decades, a development that protects and maintains the unique character of the special property rather than inviting thousands of semi-trucks and massive concrete boxes to mar this gem forever. Respectfully submitted, Lori A. Seacrest, Save Weyerhaeuser Campus President and longtime Federal Way resident. Thank you.
Judy Zerlichen. And then Carol Taguillon.
Greetings, Mayor, Council, Deputy Mayor, and fellow citizens. My name is Judy Zerlichen. Were you aware that the possibility of some of the Federal Way's environmental protection factors might soon be decreased? I encourage you to read about the new plan under legal notices in last Friday's Federal Way Mirror. This letter is about the Transportation Improvement Plan, TIP. TIP is a non-project specific action that lists transportation-related projects to be completed by the city, state, and federal funds. Although it does not specifically address potential impacts on the environment, compromises may be following. Thankfully, there are 2 safeguards that come from the outside. If new roads and transportation developments are financed by state and federal funds, then each of them will be evaluated by the SEPA and the NEPA, State and National Environment Policy Acts. From what I've seen, current RCW codes are not being enforced, especially when it comes to the abuses of unscrupulous developers. So it seems city officials struggle accurately determining the likelihood of new projects resulting in adverse environmental impacts. The rules are about to change. Soon the city can be exempt from having to do environmental impact statements. By exempting itself, Public Works Department and the Traffic Division will be set free from the nuances and the nuisance of considering the project's critical areas. This will expedite building of roads and transportation connections. The greater use of a rubber stamp, DNS, determined non-significant, might be used on any new projects funded in this endeavor. And alleviating the important safeguarding of this step is a disaster, making a total travesty for Western Washington.
It looks like the city of Federal Way is on the cutting edge and is most likely leading in the area of disregard to the environment and its citizens. Some don't seem to care about the inherent beauty and the uniqueness of this area. It's becoming apparent that getting money from state and federal funds is of greater importance than care for the environment. After all, Together We Build was Mayor Farrell's theme last State of the City address, and that can't happen without improved transportation and pushing through with new roads and other thoroughfares. But why would you allow that without considering the citizens and the sensitive areas? Critical habitats are at risk. Any exemption from requiring an EIS will clearly give approval for any future transportation development as long as the creative funding can be quickly acquired. Is this really the city's 6-year plan on how to make living in Federal Way worse for tax-paying, breathing, outdoor living, recreational citizens? Please help stop this from happening. Thank you.
Carol Tagayun?
Correct. My name is Carol Tagayan. I am representing AT&T. Tonight, my office is at 16331 Northeast 72nd Way in Redmond. And thank you, Mayor and council members, for the opportunity to submit comments tonight. This is regarding the small cell ordinance, item 8A on your agenda. And as you all probably know, wireless technology has become very ingrained in our lifestyles. The CDC reported in 2010 that nearly half of every 5 households have chosen to become wireless only, meaning that they don't have landlines. And of the households that do have landlines, 75% of them is estimated to not be using their landlines because people are depending on the multiple wireless devices that they carry around with them. Consumers today are relying on these devices to stay connected, but also in emergencies. It's been reported that nearly 70% of all 911 calls are coming from wireless devices these days. So whether you're at home or you have an emergency and you need access, or you just need to get information from your device, it's very important that we have good wireless coverage. Since 2007, just some background, AT&T on our network, we have experienced a 250,000% increase in data traffic on our network, and that's basically since the advent of smartphones and the iPhone. That's why we are continually working to upgrade our network to keep up with the demand. And that includes new technologies such as small cells. And those are going to densify our networks and give us enhanced data and voice services. Small cells are smaller, less intrusive than major cell sites, but they do work together to ensure that we have good coverage and capacity. Anyway, these are the reasons that AT&T is here to represent. As you look through your ordinance, I understand that this is an interim ordinance that you have today. We have submitted a letter with some comments at your first reading, and some of those comments include policy suggestions. So we know that that will be taken up when you look at the permanent ordinance, but wanted to be here to thank you in advance for the work you're going to do, remind you how important it is that we have good networks here in your city, especially with the great events and community work that you have going on, and I will be here in case you have questions.
Thank you very much. Brian, I wanted to give you an opportunity to address Mrs. Zerligen's questions or comments. Is there something you can provide very briefly, or do we need to come back maybe next meeting?
I can talk about it now. My understanding, based on her comments, is with regards to the Transportation Improvement Plan, which is a 6-year plan that lists transportation projects that potentially could be financed by the city in conjunction with other outside sources. It does not authorize any specific project. If there is a project, a transportation project that is authorized, then at that point, we would conduct environmental review of a specific project, because at that point, the alignment becomes more clear, whereas at this point, it's just a general road work plan of projects that we're approving. So the determination of non-significance is just for the list of projects, but once any one specific project gets an alignment identified and funding package in place, then we will do full environmental review of that project and its impacts to the surrounding land.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. All right, Trista Duvall, and then Zachary Greenside, Angela Baylor, Peggy Darling, Suzanne Vargo, and Michael Brown for 5 minutes. Dr. Michael Brown.
Hello, everyone. Hello, Mayor Farrell. Hello, Council. Hello, everyone. Thank you to all of you here for the Weyerhaeuser campus and the environmental work and watchdogness that you're doing. I really appreciate that. As a resident of Federal Way and a lady who had her first kiss with her husband in the Heilbos wetlands, so it's very important to me to preserve that particular place. First of all, I want to just finish the letter that my mom wrote, because Mom, she only had one paragraph left, so I'm just going to say it. She was saying, losing center stage would be a loss to both the arts in our community and to the many youth in our community who now and in the future will call center stage their family away from home. I'm asking that you give them a chance to build this work they have started. In many ways, it's a new work, one focused not only on producing excellent theater, but on serving the city of Federal Way. I believe, if given the chance, that under this new management, center stage will be setting a standard that other theaters will want to emulate. Please give them a chance to do Federal Way proud. Thank you. Thanks, Mom. So that's the end of my mom's. I just wanted to let you all know, Angela and I met with the school district this morning, and I want to make sure that the council knows and that the mayor knows that we have decided to put the school programs that we have for center stage on the forefront of our efforts to preserve our theater, and that we, in speaking with the school district today, we let them know that whether or not we have a home, whether or not we're doing shows on a stage or in my driveway, whether or not we are able to continue the professional work that we've done in the community, whether or not we're able to preserve everything that we want to at this point, that we are prioritizing continuing the programs for the schools in Federal Way to serve the underserved and the underprivileged youth there, because it's very important to us. And that no matter what else happens, as long as we have a space to do a show, we will use that show to do our Page to the Stage program, which is an integrated arts program with outreach to high school students in Federal Way, and that I personally will continue to find ways to mentor those youth. So we just want to make sure that that's on record, that that's something that we're that committed to. The other thing that I wanted to say was that in this process, we've gotten to know a lot of the council members, and we really appreciate the time and the effort that you've put into listening to us and getting to know what's going on. And we have had a lot of support in the community and outside of Federal Way itself. And as a resident of Federal Way, I ask you to continue to help us navigate this. Help us stay here. Help us make Federal Way strong. I don't know if you know this or not, but we're the only theater of our kind between Olympia and Seattle. There are no other professional theaters of our size and scope that employ the artists we do and offer the programs that we offer between Olympia and Seattle. Federal Way is it. That's huge. Let's not lose it. Thanks.
Great, thank you. And Zachary, as you make your way up, John, we've got a negotiation session tomorrow, do we not?
That is correct, sir. We've had several, almost every week. We took last week off because Angela was in Houston at a conference. But yes, we are meeting again tomorrow afternoon.
Great. And then I'll be meeting with them as well later this week, or we will be. Zachary Greenside.
Thank you. I'm going to try and be a little bit less formal because I've never done this before. So I've lived in Federal Way for the last 15 years. And I first off wanted to say I appreciate your guys' emphasis on taking down the illegal grow operations, not because I am personally against marijuana, because I'm not, but I don't like that it's bringing the crime into our neighborhoods. And that's kind of leading into where my comments are going. over the last 5 years, but specifically over the last 2 to 3 years, I've noticed a huge increase in the homeless population. And not that the homeless population itself is a problem, but the byproduct of that is the problem. The green belt behind my house is littered with trash. Trash bags that have been pulled out of garbage cans, and they dump them, sift through them, and they're just left there. It's hard for me to let my son walk home from school because my neighbor across the street just last week found a heroin needle in the middle of the street. And that's hard to say, yeah, go ahead and walk home from school, just watch the road for needles. That's hard for me to have to tell my kids that when, I've lived here for almost half my life and I want my kids to be able to grow up and enjoy Federal Way. My neighbor, the neighbor that found that, took that as his exit. He said, I don't want to be here anymore. And he's literally packing up his house right now and he's leaving. He's finding a new house to move to because he has 2 little kids and he doesn't want them to have to encounter that every day. Part of where I'm leading with this is I'm curious if the city council or the city as a whole has any plan of action in how we're going to handle this problem. How, as citizens, can we help handle this problem? What can we do to make sure this starts to resolve itself? I know one aspect, obviously, is to call the police if you see anything that's out of the ordinary or see, maybe heroin needles. I don't know if maybe that's excessive, but, another problem I've noticed is that the police force tends to be pretty inundated as of the last couple of years, especially with crime and the homeless calls. So I've heard. That may not be true, but one specific incident that I had was we encountered someone who may have been in our house. Our front door was open. I was in Seattle at work. I was able to get in my car, drive home, and I got there before the police did. And that was pretty eye-opening for me. I was able to get inside the house, check the house, because my wife was there. She sat across the street and waited. And after I'd already checked the house, the police then showed up. So that's something that was pretty eye-opening for me. So, yeah. Thank you.
All right, Zachary, thank you very much for your comments. I'm going to have, Yarden Weidenfeld here in the front row with you. He's going to come back there. He's going to tell you about the efforts. Actually, our Deputy Chief of Police, Steve Neal, actually has a task force where we're cleaning up certain encampments. We've also had a homeless mothers and children initiative, and now we've got a comprehensive 31-member homeless committee. But we certainly are watching and acting carefully to make sure that we're picking up needles. Actually, that if you see a needle out there, we'll take care of it. Just let us know. Can you raise your hand so Yarden can see it? So he's going to get your information, tell you about what we're up to, and make sure that this is your conduit of information for the future if you want to get more information. Okay, thank you. Okay, Angela Baylor. And then Peggy Darling.
Good evening, Mayor Farrell and council members. First of all, we want to thank you for those of you who were able to make it to the pajama game. Hopefully you enjoyed it. We did have a successful run of the show. So I just wanted to share a quick story. John said that I was in Houston last week. I had the fortunate opportunity to work an Association of Arts Administration Educators Conference. So a bunch of people teaching what I do for a living, which was fabulous. As part of that conversation that conference, we were able to hear from the executive director of Houston Grand Opera and from the general manager of Alley Theater. And as you know, back in September, Hurricane Harvey went through Houston. The Houston Grand Opera and the Houston Ballet lost their home due to the flooding, the Worthen Center. And so he showed us pictures of the water was like 14 feet high. It was insane. Totally destroyed a lot of their assets. The Alley Theater had just renovated their downstairs theater, and they, like 6 or 9 months before, Hurricane Harvey came through and totally demolished that downstairs theater. So they have since rebuilt. The Houston Grand Opera and the ballet still don't have a home. The Grand Opera, what they did is they have what they call Resilience Theater. They have come into the convention center. They've worked with the convention center, and they now perform there. The reason that I'm telling you this is that it was so inspiring because the city of Houston in this natural disaster came and supported the arts. All of the other stuff was happening, but they saw the importance of the arts in a community. The city of Houston gives the arts $40 million. Now, I realize we are not on the city of Houston budget, but if you look at the percentage, the arts, Mayor Farrell knows the importance of the arts, but Councilmember Kopeng asked about when does a city lose its soul? And if the city loses the arts, you lose the soul. We had the gentleman just talk about the drug problem. You talked about the grow houses that have been shut down. The arts help prevent that. We are dedicated to helping the community. We are dedicated to making Federal Way a better place with the use of the arts. Right now, we appreciate the negotiations. We hope and pray that we will be able to get to some sort of agreement. Right now, the agreement is not tenable for us because we don't want to, we can't sustain the loss of the management fee and the additional rent that's being tossed about. But we do want to come to an agreement, and as we go forward in the next couple of weeks, please remember that we want to help Federal Way become a better community, and we have services that we want to offer. So thank you so much for all of your support, and we really hope that we can get to an agreement. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Peggy Darling.
Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, council members, friends of Federal Way. I've spoke before, and I'm here on behalf of Center Stage, and I won't go into just how much it means to me. I've already told you all that. I do want to thank you for all that you're doing with Special Olympics, the illegal grow houses, beautifying our city that we all really love, even though I've only been here a short time. One of the most beautiful things about the city is Center Stage and what they have to offer. The building itself isn't that attractive, and it's a hard place to get to, and you can't see it right off the highway. So that's a concern. When I think I've heard you talk about wanting to rent the space out to some other entity or whatever. It isn't easy to get to, and if it's got icy roads in the winter, it's very hard to get to. But one of the beautiful things about it is the people that are inside, that work there. I've done volunteering there, I've met the staff, I've met a lot of the actors, and it's a beautiful place. The outside, in the back, the views are gorgeous. It would be horrible that if you wouldn't be able to rent it, the building would sit empty and possibly go into disrepair. That would be terrible for Federal Way. They offer so much. Your sign says centered on opportunity. This place gives the opportunity for so many artists to come, and this high school students that were in this last show, and it's an amazing thing to be a part of. And I know last time I was here, I think I literally begged you all to come see a performance before you made a decision. I would like to ask who all went, but I won't put you on the spot. But I do want to thank those that didn't take the time to go. And I'm trying to read my notes, but as in high school, I can't read them. My brain goes faster than my hand. But we just want to make sure that you're putting every effort in that you can to keep this wonderful hidden gem of Federal Way, because it means so much to so many of us. And it even helps the community because we go out to eat after we go to a show, and other people, we'd like to go to the small businesses, and we help support so many. I mean, I could go home, but we go out, and I know many, many other people do too. And please give it the old college try, I guess you'd say. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Peggy. Suzanne Vargo, and then Dr. Brown.
Hi, everybody, Mayor, Council, residents, and neighbors. In 2014, I looked in our agenda in minutes, and I noticed that our Title 14 and 19 sensitive and critical area codes were changed, and many, many times. I would like to know if those changes were made to benefit our environment, or if they were made to undermine ecology standards and best science practices. Back in September of last year, I was talking about a Class 3 wetland that was being violated. The city allowed this person to work through several cease orders with no fines. Then a restoration order was created. At this time, today, pipes are still plunged into the wetland, trees haven't been planted, and most recently, cows have been allowed on the property. Cows haven't been on the property for over 20 years. We had repeatedly, the cows recently on the property have been trampling and defecating on, in, and around the wetland for many, many months now. We have repeatedly insisted that no cows should be on the property during this restoration plan, only to be told, you guys, there is no restoration plan. Not once in the last 4 months while talking about the cows to our director did anyone tell me that the restoration plan is not valid. So I spent all this time and effort taking pictures and trying to get involved and doing what I should do as a citizen, only to be told, you know what? Sorry, we didn't get our wetlands expert to sign off on that. It is a known fact that the city does not have enough staff, and this alone is reason to question whether the city has the capability to be a lead agency, being the person who oversees our environmental needs. Actions like this are happening all over the city. The city wants to allow rezoning of critical aqua recharge lands. They want to punch roads through private property and remove tree buffers, the trees that were left on purpose because they are keeping our high levels cool and clean. The city is taking sensitive lands that we have been told would never be touched and turning them over to developers. Lakota Creek is such an area. Developers have been removing trees for over 2 years. No cease orders have been ordered. No violations to this person. From what I've experienced and observed, it seems that the city is already operating with an NDS mentality. The city is looking the other way to mass violations throughout our city. The enforcement rules are in place, so why won't the city adhere to them? Why? I believe our new sign and logo for our city could possibly be, "Welcome to the City of Non-Significance." Thank you.
Dr. Brown.
Good evening. Unfortunate to have such a long meeting. I've edited my words so thoroughly that I can't read them anymore. So I'm going to start by saying ditto to everything Lori Seacrest said. And I thought that was fabulous. You'll be hearing a lot more, Mr. Mayor and Brian in particular, from a variety of experts relevant to this development. But I wanted to say that while we do a lot of saying, no, we don't want that, and no, we shouldn't allow that, one thing that we are practical enough to realize and agree on is that, as Brian pointed out, IRG bought that property and has the rights to it, and we recognize that that a return on investment will be a necessary part of making the right thing happen. However, the right thing happen is not warehouses, and that's clear to everybody. And if anybody had a magic button they could push and make the warehouse plan go away, they would do it immediately. I think it must be very frustrating to sit there and be told as a city council that you have no role to play in this kind of decision, and that it's all an administrative decision. And in fact, all of the behind-the-scenes goings-on that will be part of the solution here are not administrative, they're political and economic. And in order to end up with a solution that's satisfying to both IRG's investors and to the people who are going to live here for generations and who should enjoy that treasure, we're going to have to make sure that trees aren't clear-cut and warehouses aren't built. In order to do that, we request that there not be a decision rendered on the land use permits currently before the city, at least as individually constructed currently. If the decision is made to issue a land use permit, it would immediately, of course, be appealed to the hearing examiner by the Save Warehouse organization and other interested parties. But it would be an important step in IRG's desire to cut down all those trees. And probably the worst scenario is that all those trees get cut down, all that water gets ruined, all that greenery is gone, and then the Supreme Court of Washington says you can't build those warehouses there. So we need to make sure we don't go down that path. And so the two requests that I would make, and I think would be supported by my colleagues, are before the city renders a decision about a land use permit on any of those properties, require from IRG a commitment, a legally binding commitment, that they will not cut down trees until all possible appeals have been completed. Meaning, we're not in front of the King County Court and turn around one day and find that all the trees have been cut down. And there's dispute about who has the final word on yes, you can, or no, you can't. And in the gray area of that dispute is the opportunity for terrible destruction to occur. So that's one. Don't issue don't render a decision publicly until that commitment has been made. And the second is, given that IRG has now completed applications and have been accepted as completed by the city for 5 new warehouses, I believe, 1.5 million square feet, acres of pavement and parking lots, massive increases in traffic that we clearly cannot sustain with the existing systems, and the destruction of the character of the campus that's purportedly protected by the concomitant agreement and required to do so by the city council in 1994. We request that the 3 different proposals, as have been mentioned by several colleagues, be considered as one with a single comprehensive plan and environmental impact statement, so that the entirety of the process can be assessed and understood. Let me see if there's anything else here that's critical. I guess just that we believe, and we hope you believe, that there's something better than warehouses that can happen there, that can meet the needs of IRG and leave a legacy for our city. You can imagine the light rail station being built, and if you look at Auburn or you look at Kent, those stations have become a nexus of growth of retail, of restaurants, of apartments. And you look at what's going to happen right next to our train station is going to be warehouses. That's not really the way to go. But the way to make sure that these catastrophic things don't happen is to not publicly render an opinion until the other things that have to happen have happened.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Brian, I'll have you respond to Dr. Brown and the group via email. And did you have anything to add regarding Ms. Vargo's comments?
She had about 3 different parts of town that she was talking about, all of which we're actively pursuing. The characterization that we are doing nothing is inaccurate. And we are, some of the cases they've lawyered up and it's made it somewhat difficult to get resolution, but we are still pursuing that.
All right. Okay, and then if you can get back to that question, especially that, essentially that legal question, maybe coordinate with Ryan about the specific of the request not to issue a determination, and we'll just respond to that. Obviously, we've got a process that we're obligated to follow. So, okay. I'm sorry. Councilmember Moore?
Thank you so much. You know, I haven't seen a cow in Federal Way, so I'm intrigued with, is there truth, validity to cows?
We didn't put the cows there.
We didn't put them in there?
I'm positive of that.
Okay. But are there cows? We have pictures of, okay. But if I may, to Brian, are there cows?
There are cows.
Is that,
Alert the media.
Were they flown in or no? By my interesting. So was the city notified with the cows coming in? I mean, did that pass our criterias?
Cows are allowed in the city in the zone that we're discussing. So, no, we were not notified. But
Martin,
upon investigation, we found the cows and the zoning allows them.
Yeah, I guess, Mr. Mayor, and I really appreciate you
I
letting
grew
me-
up on the right there on the east side of Pacific Highway, just north of 373rd, and there were lots of cows. So they've been here for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, I asked that question because, you know, I know that a couple of months back, we were kind of surprised to see the trees, I don't know how to say it, but slashed, if you will, or shredded up as they're cut, and we weren't aware of that. If I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong.
We
Now,
granted them
and now we see cows, and we weren't notified of that as well.
The cutting of the trees was authorized through a permit, and the cows were allowed as an outright use. So there's no notice or anything involved with that.
Okay, all right. Thank you, everybody. No, we've had public comment. Thank you very much. But we're not gonna, we actually haven't closed public comment. If anybody wants to talk, fill out a pink sheet and give it to the city clerk. I'm sorry, we've got a letter. If you can go ahead and run, if anybody's got a public comment, fill out a pink sheet and get it to Stephanie because this train's leaving the station here pretty quick. Jean Peretti, why don't you come on up first before, we'll do the letter last. Okay, Jean Peretti.
Thanks. I apologize for not filling this out sooner. I just thought about this during the meeting. I'm Jean Perrietti with the Save Weyerhaeuser Campus Group, and it occurred to me that I should share with you all a letter that we facilitated for the community to submit to the city for the Green Line Business Park. Everybody's busy, they care, it's easier for them to have somebody else help them decide what to say. So I'm going to read an abridged version. We are residents of Federal Way and other communities in the Puget Sound region submitting comments about the Green Line Business Park application for the historic Weyerhaeuser corporate campus. This property has environmental, historic, and community significance. We oppose construction of warehouses on this land. It is just not in the interest of the public health, safety, and welfare of the residents of Federal Way. Our opposition to this application is much like that which we stated against Warehouse A and Warehouse B. But now that all three applications are in the pipeline and no environmental determination has been made on any of them, it would be egregious for the city to consider them as separate projects. We request a comprehensive environmental review be completed covering the impacts from all of the three applications. We have many concerns about this Green Line Business Park application. We are highlighting the main ones here. Traffic. We believe the estimate of 400-plus semi-truck trips per day is low. After all, the largest warehouse alone, 638,000 square feet, has 165 loading dock doors and parking for 111 trucks. In its JARPA application, the applicant states the project's purpose is to provide warehouse distribution centers, but a warehouse of this size and configuration suggests use as a package hub or possibly a fulfillment center, which can generate substantially more traffic than more traditional warehouses. These warehouses must be assessed for traffic on the worst-case scenario based on their size and configuration. Even with 400 trucks, this project will have huge impacts on South 320th Street and the 320th Interstate 5 interchange. We request that the applicant be required to widen the 320th Street overpass to provide queuing and turning space for semi-trucks entering and leaving the interchange to prevent gridlock at an already congested area in our growing city. In addition, the traffic impacts from such a massive project cannot be considered separately from the 400 semi-truck trips estimated from warehouses A and B at the south end of the campus, as if there were a concrete barrier across Weyerhaeuser Way to prevent these trucks from traversing the campus or cutting through neighborhoods. And my time's almost up, so I'll just cut to the chase that we disagree with Tetra Tech's assessment that the Green Line Business Park project will have no effect on any cultural resource property listed on or eligible for nomination to the National Register of Historic Places, because the state has determined that it is eligible. And we thank you for your consideration of our efforts to preserve what's special about our community. And we're up to 650 signatures on this letter, and we're going to continue collecting them. So, thank you.
Thank you, Jean. All right, Richard Pearson. And then we've got a letter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for giving us the time, and City Council, staff, and residents of Federal Way. I wasn't going to testify, or I wasn't going to make public comment tonight, but a couple of comments in Brian Davis's presentation really forced me to do so. First, just two things. First, Mr. Davis mentioned relative to the comments on the 3 Green Line warehouse applications that what we thought was comment period was closed. If I understand him right, comments from the public can continue to be made until the city gives its decision, reaches its decision, gives it to the hearing officer. So we can keep the public comments going unless you say otherwise. And I see you nodding your head positively, or you're going to come back for further elaboration. Okay. And secondly, I'm frustrated, as I'm sure you on City Council are frustrated, with Mr. Davis's mentioning that City Council is not involved in the application process, in the application decision-making process. Your hands are tied. But that was not always the case. In 2014, just 4 years ago, City Council changed the 1994 Federal Way Code that went with the annexation concomitant agreement to take the City Council out of the decision-making process. And I'm really frustrated, as I'm sure you are, with not having the opportunity to be in that process. And this comes to I just had to bring this up, that how frustrated I am, and I share your frustration with your inability to prevent what I say is changing Weyerhaeuser Way to Warehouse Way. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. And we appreciate the sentiment, and the key thing is, and this is why we wanted Brian to make the presentation, is it's very important as an organization, as an entity, as a subdivision of the state, that we respect the letter of the law and make sure that we do absolutely everything according to that law as we have it today. And so we're committed to doing that, and we're going to do that. As to your comment, as to your question about comment period, Brian?
Yes, the answer is comments can continue to be submitted for the Green Line Business Park application because it is a process that includes a hearing before the hearing examiner. Comments can be submitted to the city up and to the hearing itself through the means that I mentioned before, either hand delivery or email to the Community Development Office.
Very good. And just to make sure that, to give some context for folks, I think what Mr. Pearson was talking about is, as some of the council members may or may not be aware, and what the public may or may not be aware, we used to have a process for certain zoning decisions in which the council would sit almost like a jury, or in what they refer to as a quasi-judicial function. Now, we did that actually with when I first got on the council back in 2004, one of the first things we did is we looked at the application for the big church on Casey Treat's church, Christian Faith Center, CFC, on 336th. And that was a very, very I recall just how particular it was that any council member had to record, not record, but relay and make a personal record, or make a public record of any conversations that they had with any member of the public about that item. And it was a very, very restrictive process that would prevent any member of the council from talking to any member of the public about that issue without it making a public record. That was called a quasi-judicial function. This council decided to opt with the vast majority of cities in the state that have a hearing examiner process. So that's my understanding. It was my experience, and so we don't do that here, and therefore we have that different process. So we've got the letter. Please.
Letter received from Taylor Davis. It reads, to City of Federal Way, much has been said regarding the value of Center Stage Theater and Federal Way, more often detailing its cultural and community worth. Many have spoken at the previous meetings, myself included, about what Center Stage means to them personally and how it has made a positive impact in their lives. Youth stood up and praised the unique educational experience Center Stage provides and gave personal account of their own tremendous growth within the internship program. The city is concerned of cost, yet Center Stage provides a long-lasting positive impact on the community which will reap financial gain for the city in the future. The youth programs give a safe and positive environment, keeping at-risk youth away from crime, jail, and becoming a burden on the city's resources. Patrons who come to Center Stage spend money at multiple Federal Way businesses, which benefits the city overall. More importantly, the space itself is a resource for the city. However, without the proper understanding of what entities may afford it, the space will most likely be vacant, becoming a burden on the city. Center Stage has the tools, resources, and dedicated staff that will be able to keep this space alive and thriving for patrons, children, at-risk youth, businesses, and most importantly, the city. The closest theater rents for a fraction of the rate currently being asked. Finding patrons to fill seats is exceedingly difficult, more so when there's not already community support. Having a resident theater company means already having patronage. Everyone benefits from Center Stage renewing their management contract. If it expires, the space is vacant, no one benefits, least of all the City of Federal Way. Supporting the arts is not a drain on city's finances, it's an investment in its future. Sincerely, Taylor Davis.
All right, thank you very much. Great public comment. Now moving on to the consent agenda. We've already dealt with several of these items. Item G was removed back to council by council vote. Item E, 5E, was moved to 7B for a business item consideration. I'll go ahead and read these items. These items have already gone through public comment. Here they are. Item A, minutes for the May 15, 2018 regular and special meetings. Item B, vouchers, April 2018. Item C, monthly financial report, April 2018. Item D, Safe City Camera Equipment Agreement. Item F, Special Olympics Tourism Grant Contract. Council, other than the items that have already been pulled, would a council member want to pull an item for separate consideration and discussion? All right, hearing none, Deputy Mayor Honda, do you have a motion?
I move approval of items A through D and item F.
Second.
All right, there's been a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, those matters pass unanimously. All right, now, moving on to the public hearing. I'll open the public hearing at this time. This is the updated 2018 program year CDBG Annual Action Plan. First, we'll have a staff report by our Community Services Manager, Jeff Watson. Then we'll have citizen comment opportunity, and then council action. So, Mr. Watson, I presume.
Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, members of the council.
Been waiting all night to say that.
Before you this evening is an updated version of the annual action plan. Policy question is pretty basic. Should the council approve the updated program year 2018 Community Development Block Grant CDBG Annual Action Plan? Just to remind you, the council acted on the action plan, approving it in January of this year based on an anticipated award amount of approximately $675,000. There was also included contingency language that would allow for staff to make some adjustments if the award amount was greater or lesser than that $675,000. I'm very pleased to be able to share with you that the award notice we received from HUD on May 1st awarded the city $721,000, a 7% increase over what we received for the 2017 program year. What we're doing this evening is really more of a little bit of housekeeping. The reason that we had to have a public hearing is because of language that we had to include at really HUD's urging regarding pre-award spending. Otherwise, we just are showing the adjusted amounts for previously approved grants. To remind you, the objectives of the annual action plan this year revolve around affordable housing, economic development, supportive of small businesses, strengthening neighborhoods, and simply the administration of the CDBG program. The language that HUD urges us to include, and I'm going to go ahead and read this in full, so please bear with me. Pre-award costs incurred prior to the agreement with the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development are allowable under the waiver granted via notice CPD-18-01. Pre-award costs incurred by projects included in the 2018 Annual Action Plan will not impact future projects or future years' funding. The incurred costs are necessary to the implementation of the activities and for continuity of services to the community. And that language is included in the updated annual action plan. Because of the inclusion of that language, that was the cause for us to have to advertise this and hold a public hearing. Just to run through things pretty quickly, in terms of overall funding, the categories remain the same: planning and admin, public services, the SURF. Again, it was about a 7% increase, and those increases are reflected in the total amounts for each of those categories. The public services budget, an increase to all of the public service projects. And then with regard to the capital projects, really the only thing that changed here is the Section 108 loan payment amount, which was increased from $210,000 to $235,000. That is a result of what we have seen in terms of the interest and principal payments that are being made and have been made thus far, and so we expected to need an additional amount, and so we increased that number. The timeline, as you can see, we had previously gone through the application period and public hearings, council's action in January. We had a public comment period beginning on May 18th of this year and ending today. We have received no comments with regard to the updated plan. We have the public hearing and council action being requested this evening. That concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
All right. Prior to that, do we have any citizen comment? Any citizen comment on this? Okay. Hearing none, moving on to council. Council, any questions regarding this? Councilmember Seffa Dawson.
Yeah, thank you. With the funding allocation, are there any programs or projects that were not considered for funding before the increase of funds?
For CDBG, no.
So all the programs that applied for funding were awarded?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
And was it at the level that they requested, or I did not see the
I
request,
believe that's correct. Yes, it is.
Okay. So, yeah, no, I'm good. I'll talk to you offline.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Council, any other questions? All right, thank you, Jeff. All right, Councilmember Johnson, do you have a motion?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I move to close the public hearing.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second to close the public hearing. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, the public hearing is closed. Councilmember Johnson, do you have a motion with regard to passage?
Yes, so I move approval of the updated program year 2018 CDBG Annual Action Plan with the Human Services Commission recommendations and authorize the mayor to execute all documents associated with the plan and corresponding funding agreements with the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Matter passes unanimously. Thank you, Jeff, very much for your work and good presentation. All right, business. We've got the proposed settlement regarding the Lehman Estate lawsuit. Staff report by Ryan Call, or do we have, or we
Just
just
the
gonna skip?
motion.
We'll just skip right to the motion. Deputy Mayor Hounda, do you have a motion?
Yes, I do. I move approval of the proposed settlement in the matter of the estate of Joyce LeBlanc versus City of Federal Way in the amount of $92,500.
Second. All right, there's been a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, the matter passes unanimously. Item 7B, formerly 5E, the TAG Awards for July through December of December 2018. And who's going to be addressing that?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Moore.
yeah, so I'll make the motion and open it up for discussion. I'll mention why I'm doing what I'm doing under discussion. Is that okay?
Yeah, of course, yes.
All right, so I move approval of the July to December 2018 Tourism Enhancement Grant Awards as recommended by the FedRAC, with the exception of the Powell's Garden Award, which I move to return to the LTAC for further consideration at a future regular council meeting.
Second.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second to remove, to pass as is, but to extract out and refer back to the LTAC committee, the Powell's Wood allocation. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Is there any discussion on that?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, thank you so much. We had our
Wait a second, well, I do want to say that FedRAC is ceding this over to LTAC because normally it would come to us and we'd make the motion.
Right. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
And, yeah, thank you so much, Deanie, for that. The subcommittee did their work, the TAG subcommittee within the LTAC committee did their work, came up with the recommendations, as you guys see in this packet that I handed out. And you will note that the Powell's Wood did not receive anything. And, and I'm still learning with this, but it's my understanding that the only way that you fit criteria for the TAG, to get TAG funds, is you have to bring in people from 50 miles out and put them into hotels in Federal Way. And so the reason why I'm asking for the council and in conjunction with FedRAC is to go back and review the the Powell's Wood request for funds because two reasons. First, staffing has changed, and the person that started but then finished are two different people, the staff. And then Powell Wood staff. Thank you for letting me clarify. And then the second part is there seems to be there needs to be clarity on information that was asked. So we will next week have our LTAC meeting, and I have invited Mr. Monty Powell to come to the committee to answer our questions, because it's my understanding that one statement that I've heard was that they bring in RVs and they stay at state parks. The comment that I've heard from Mr. Powell is that, nope, they have used 47 hotels, 47 people of their followers have used hotels in Federal Way. So I want to bring some clarity. I want to come back, thanks to Chair Deanie Duclos. I'll be working with her in conjunction with this, and ideally we'll bring it to the most immediate future council meeting. So I'm happy to answer questions, but the purpose is to take that part back, to study that, and bring it back to council.
Deputy Mayor Hondo.
Could we ask staff about this?
Okay.
Tim Johnson, Economic Development Lodging Tax Advisory Committee staff. So, historically, the council can overrule LTAC, and you have, and on a variety of different occasions, when you look at the staff reports that come up from, and in my case, my recommendation was $2,500 per Powell's Wood, because it's the same amount of hotel space that the golf tournament does. So the logic behind it was absolutely the same number. And so it stood to reason, continued on with the TEG subcommittee, and then was carried on at a recommendation. The hotelers disagreed because they said they could not see the hotel stays, and so it was suggested to them that maybe because of their costs of hotel rooms, they were using other hotels in the city because of the market segment, and those hotelers are not on the LTAC, and so they did not see the attendees. And so my recommendation, Mayor and Council, would be to just rule on the staff recommendation of $2,500 along with the TEG subcommittee and continue on in that vein if that is available, and I'll turn to the city attorney if that is an allowable option.
There's already a pending motion, so if you want to reform your motion.
Yes. Yes, we could revise.
Yes,
so
I guess
being
my
the creator
concern
of
would-
the motion, I can revise.
So my concern would be just, there's a set pot of money, so as long as there's funds for this, that hasn't been vetted by me.
So,
There is.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I will go back and revise my motion to go ahead and include the Powell's Garden Award in the LTAC recommendation.
And how much?
Yes.
How much
In the
money?
amount of,
In the amount of,
2,500?
thank you, $2,500.
And the individual that did the second, who was the second?
Staff recommendation.
Actually, it was second. He made a motion, it was originally second. Okay, and so, all right.
So my revised motion, for clarity for everybody, for my colleagues, is that, and staff is recommending this, so is to include Powell's Woods staff recommendation of $2,500.
Mr. Moore, could you restate the entire motion?
That's what I'm
please?
trying to do, yes.
You're starting in the middle. So we need the entire, so the authorization of the previously
Okay,
approved thing
yep.
plus the new thing.
Thanks, Ryan.
Yep.
I move approval of the December 2018 Tourism Enhancement Grant Award as recommended by FEDRAC with the exception, no,
Not Federal.
by FEDRAC Committee. Would that be it, Ryan?
To add $2,500?
To also include Powell's Garden, Powell's Wood, of $2,500 of TAG funds.
Is there a second? Second. Is there any discussion?
I have a question.
The Councilmember Stephanie Dawson?
Yeah. So the hotels did not have a record of people staying in their hotels, correct? That's the statement?
No. The members of the LTAC that represent hotels did not have a record of it. But that doesn't mean that they didn't, the attendees didn't stay in Federal Way hotels.
Yeah,
They
I understand.
did.
So my question is, is there a way of tracking that? That's where I was
We
going.
do
at with
track
this question.
that.
You
It's a
do, okay.
requirement of that, and their post grant report from last year and previous years all show where those people stay. And so in some of those cases, they are staying in hotels that do not represent the membership of the hotelers that are on your lodging tax advisory committee. So they have no clue, but we inform them of where those stays go.
Right. So is it like is it like a question they would ask them when people come to the desk, or is there a discount? How do they track it, is my,
Good question.
how do they know to track
Okay,
it?
so there's 4 or 5 different ways, so I can run through those. I'd rather not elongate it, but it's a survey that is taken on by the venue that we provide the grant money to, and then the work is validated by city staff to ensure the fact that it fulfills the requirements of the Joint Legislative Audit Review Committee. If it doesn't pass that audit, which we've just gone through and it passed with flying colors, then it's rejected. And they either have to pay the money back to the state or we have to pay it back. So there is a penalty here if people don't get the reporting correct. So it's something that we take very seriously in this process. Tomorrow, for a better part of 4 to 5 hours, I will spend with Special Olympics, for example, going through every hotel reservation they have in preparation of completion of their contract. And by the way, the city attorney had advised me that we had not been in alignment with state requirement, and we now have to do full contractual agreements. So when Mr. Powell and I sit down, he's going to sign a contract to make sure that there are that many hotel stays in our community. And so moving forward, at this point, it's by contract.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Honda?
And if there are not the hotel stays, the money will not be awarded to
Legally.
So, yeah, that's correct. I mean, they have to come in and do that. If we find out that, and they tell us that there is no indication that anybody stayed in our community, that's it. Because they will have signed a contract that said X amount. Now, if they're shy a couple here or there, we're not gonna, that's not the spirit of the contract. But I mean, telling you, if they're supposed to have 50 hotel room nights and nobody shows up, oops, what happened there? That's a point of contention for not contract performance.
Okay. Is there any more discussion?
Mr. Mayor, for the purpose of information, and talking with Mr. Powell, and I know that he's in the audience, you know, and Tim's right, you know, 47, they've had 47 stays in various hotels, including motels here in Federal Way. So some of them are not able to track it because some of them are not part of the tourism aspect. But I will say that for 7 years that they've been operating Powell's Gardens, they have not only poured money into something that brings in you know, out-of-town guests and provides to our tourism aspect. But they've been doing it for 7 years, and they've put well over $200,000 into investments into their property. And secondly, I'll say that historically, they've only come at us, this will be their second time working on getting their tag funds. And I think that's information that needs to be shared and put out there. And so, thank you.
All right, is there any further discussion? All right, there's been a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Matter passes unanimously. Deputy Mayor Honda, do you have a motion?
Yes, I move that we extend the meeting past 10 p.m.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Matter passes unanimously. Now we're on to item 8, ordinances for second reading and enactment. Council Bill 739, adopting interim land use regulation to control the provision of telecommunications facilities within the city. First, we've got clarification comments by Ryan Cole, City Attorney.
Thank you, Mayor. Excuse me. There was one minor technical change since first reading, which was based on observed comments made in another jurisdiction in Normandy Park, based on basically the exact same text. So it's very simple. If you look on page 24 of 37 in the ordinance, there's a section called strand-mounted small cell facilities, and if you go down to A of that section, it now reads, each strand-mounted facility shall not exceed 3 cubic feet in volume. Previously, it shall be less than 3 cubic volume, and apparently the doohickey that they use is exactly 3 feet. So we just changed it.
All right. Sounds good. All right. Would the city clerk please read the ordinance title?
Council Bill 739, adopting interim land use regulations to control the provision of telecommunication facilities within the city. An ordinance of the City of Federal Way, Washington, relating to the adoption of interim land use regulations and official controls pursuant to RCW 35A 63220 and RCW 3670A 390 to control the provision of telecommunication facilities within the city, amending Federal Way Revised Code 1905010, 1905050, 1905130, 1905170, and 1905240 to revise and repeal definitions related to wireless communications, Federal Revised Code 1915010 to exempt street use approvals, Federal Revised Code 1919030 to clarify the application of unzoned properties to right-of-way use, repealing Chapter 19255 Federal Revised Code and adding a new Chapter 19255 Federal Revised Code relating to wireless communications facilities.
All right. Councilmember Copain, do you have a motion?
Yeah, I move for approval of the proposed ordinance as amended.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Matter passes unanimously. Item B.
We're missing one vote, though. It's 6-0.
Right. Councilmember Honda, we just voted on the section, Council Bill 739, adopting interim land use regulations to control the provision of telecommunication facilities. Did you wish to cast a vote?
Aye.
Okay. So the vote is 7-0. Unanimous. Okay. Thank you, Councilmember Copang. All right. Would the council please read the ordinance title for 740?
Council Bill 740, amending Title IV, Federal Revised Code to establish regulations relating to small cell deployments, franchising, and small cell permits in the city's rights-of-way. An ordinance of the City of Federal Way, Washington relating to small cell deployments, franchising, and small cell permits in the city's rights-of-way and federally required review periods, amending Chapter 422, Federal Revised Code, and adding new chapters 4.23 and 4.24, Federal Revised Code.
Second.
Councilmember Copang?
Yeah, I move approval of the proposed ordinance.
Second.
It's been a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
Second it before the motion is made.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Matter passed unanimously. Item C. Would the city clerk please read the ordinance title for 741?
Step on my line.
Council Bill 741, amend Federal Revised Code 19.80 regarding docket process and Department of Commerce notification, an ordinance of the City of Federal Way, Washington relating to the annual comprehensive plan and development regulation amendment procedure, and amending Federal Revised Code 19.80050, 19.80070, 19.80080, 19.80090, 19.80170, 19.80180, 19.80260, and 19.80270.
Councilmember Copang?
Yeah, I move approval of the proposed ordinance.
Second.
It's been a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Matter passed unanimously. Council reports and committee reports. We'll start with Councilmember Asefa Dawson. And I do want to say, before we get started, we've added a section on here to make sure that committee chairs have an opportunity to give reports on the status of their committees. With that, Councilmember Asefa Dawson.
Thank you. Last week, I believe, I attended Ending Homelessness Conference in Yakima, and one of the things they talked about is the new bill that is going to require people who are in subsidized or public housing to pay 35% rather than 30%, to increase it to 35% of their income, which is going to be burdensome for a lot of people, especially for someone who works in the housing authority. It's going to affect whether or not they can stay in housing or stay housed. And when we're dealing with the issue of homelessness and/or affordable housing, this is very crucial. And so I think, I don't think there's anything we can do about it, but I just want the public and the council to be aware that there's additional or barrier, I should say, to people who are already housed when these types of things are coming down the pipe. And also, there's a requirement for people to look for employment or be employed or work, which is not really enforced right now, but there are no resources that are available. So in other words, there's no funding going towards training for people to be employed. So I just wanted people to be aware of that coming down and again, I'm not asking for anything, I just want awareness to be there because it's a big issue, we're already being faced with it, and now what? And so it's a problem.
Okay, great, thank you. Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the last Parks, Rec, Human Services, Public Safety Committee meeting was May 8th. We had a presentation from the Reach Center in Tacoma around the possibility of a program in Federal Way. The Reach Center is a one-stop program that offers employment for youth, counseling, access to trades and apprenticeships. And so we looked at the possibility of a program in Federal Way. And then we also had a presentation from the police chief around culturally responsive training practices and implicit bias training. Councilmember Moore requested that, and it was a good opportunity for us to ask questions around what training the police receive. And so I think it's a good time to look at that. And also, kind of think about what we could think about for, other departments in the city in terms of training. And then, so our next meeting is going to be next Tuesday, June 12th. And so we will have a look at the Panther Lake Trail construction. We'll also have an update on the homelessness task force from Yarden and Sherry Edwards. And then finally, we'll have a presentation on a potential needs-based assessment around homelessness from a community member who works for an organization that does that. And so it'll be interesting to see kind of how we can work alongside the task force as a committee. I think 2 Fridays ago, Deputy Mayor Honda and I had the opportunity to visit about 5 or 6 homeless encampments around the city, and just to see firsthand, some of the struggles and challenges we have in that area. So I think this will be obviously it's a complex and nuanced issue, but I think it'll be a great opportunity to see what we can do as a city around the issue of homelessness. And with that, that's all I have.
Thank you. Councilmember Tran?
Thank you, Mayor. Last week, Lydia and I, along with 3 members of the Diversity Commission and members of the public, participated in a jury diversity committee meeting sponsored by Judge David Lawson to talk about the problem with the jury diversity. At this meeting, Mr. Lawson shared with us, based on the survey, Federal Way has one of the worst records for participation in jury duty by minority populations. The committee members agree that we must address this problem in partnership with our community, especially schools, faith-based and minority communities. The work of this committee is ongoing, and I will have more report in the weeks to come. Councilmember Johnson was invited, but he was not available to attend.
Okay.
Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you very much. Councilmember Copay.
Yeah, as the chair of the Land Use and Transportation Committee, I just wanted to relay a few things that we went over in the last meeting. Want to applaud the staff on their thoroughness. The Retreat Meadows final plat was approved. This is a residential development that will be off of 356. It did come through the committee twice, though, because of a minor issue that they wanted to make sure was corrected. So again, good attention to detail. We were able to get that passed through and look forward to the council being able to review it and potentially approve it on the consent agenda coming up. We also talked about the LED light conversion. That's a major project. It's going to cost the city about $3 million, but will pay for itself within 5 to 7 years. So a good investment, and the life cycle on those lights is between 15 and 25 years. So we will see a return on investment that's quite substantial. As far as the transportation improvement plan, that is as we've discussed, just a plan on potential projects that we could take up over the next 6 years. And that list does change, but I think it was made clear, and I just want to reemphasize the point. Every project on that list goes through a full vetting, goes through all of the regulatory approval processes of any other project. So nothing on that the transportation improvement plan has been approved. Only the plan to pursue funding and to schedule potential completion of jobs has been approved or will be approved, but that will be through a public hearing. Also, we did talk a little bit about the long-awaited completion of the Pacific Highway South Phase 5. We're certainly looking forward to getting that done, but it's going to require additional funding. So we certainly we worked on. I would discuss that. So again, there's good things happening in land use and transportation, and we're moving the city forward in a lot of different ways. I also wanted to comment on a couple personal things. I traveled up to Burien for the Sustainable Airport Master Plan Open House. There are three planned open houses, one on the south end of Burien, and then on the north end, the east side in Bellevue, and then the third is in South Seattle at the college, or the South Seattle Community College, or I think it's now a college. Anyway, so I did attend that.
very interesting to see all the things that are going on. It's information that I had seen before as a member of the council, but what I did get the opportunity to do was hear the comments from the community. And I can tell you that the communities of Burien and Normandy Park and SeaTac and Des Moines were well represented, along with Federal Way. And there's quite a unanimity in our concern, and I think just rightfully so, and just trusting how things are proceeding with this sustainable airport master plan based on some of the results we've seen from the third runway and its impact on the communities that is yet to be addressed. So anyway, I think that's going to continue to be an issue until it's been addressed by the port. And also had a neat opportunity to be a part of a library, King County Library presentation. The library in Bellevue recently had a maker space installed, and it's what the maker space is it's an opportunity for people in the community to come in and create, build, do things with their hands that translate into either developing a skill set or just being entertained, but learning in the process. And the city of Federal Way is going to have, or the First Avenue Library is going to have the second makerspace installed in this year. So I think that we are going to be able to see have an opportunity for the youth and the young adults in the community that really have an interest in developing their skills around technology, be able to learn in a creative way. It's a great program, and certainly one that I'm looking forward to seeing implemented in the near future.
Councilmember Moore?
Thank you so much. And Councilor Tran, I assume you're starting the stopwatch? Nope, okay.
30 seconds.
30 seconds. So, as I stated back in January, you can call me the LTAC man, Mr. LTAC. And so here's my report. We discussed the TAG funds for this year. We also discussed Special Olympics. And we also discussed tourism promotions. And I have to say, being the chair of the LTAC committee, I do have an awesome chance to work very closely with Tim Johnson, and he is an extraordinary man. And I'll tell you, a department of one person, that's pretty phenomenal. And so as we get into this budget cycle, I'm hoping to grow that department. I know this is the best time for me to say that. And then I will say that he's done phenomenal work in the realm of tourism. If anybody has gone to SeaTac, they should have seen a poster that says, "Come visit Federal Way." And so I was really impressed to see that. I'll put that on my Facebook so people can see what I'm talking about. And I'll certainly share it with my colleagues if Mr. Johnson has not done that. Those are some highlights from the LTAC. We have our meeting next week on Wednesday, if I'm not mistaken, at 10 a.m. at City Hall. There's 3 items that I want to mention. I have to say that center stage is an important aspect to our community. Again, I would highly encourage for the mayor's administration for there to be thoughtful and real win-win items that are being discussed. I do look forward to reviewing a contract, and I do look forward to asking and meeting with John Hutton to discuss specifics, because I really want to see center stage here. I think it's safe to say that most of us want to see, if not all of us, want to see center stage stay in our community. And so, again, walking away with no contract is not an option, in my mind. Second thing, this past Saturday, I held, I mentioned 3 weeks ago that I've been thinking about this and trying to think how I'm going to do this for the last year and a half, and I'm really excited to say that last Saturday was my very first Coffee and Conversation series. So I hosted it at Maristas. Thank you to Councilmember Copane for just visiting and watching only, so thank you. But it was really cool because we had about 20 or so people in attendance, which was perfect for what I was looking for. And the theme was to get some nonprofits. I want to do a special shout out to Tracy Oster from Communities and Schools, Executive Director, to Peggy Laporte, founder of Fusion, to Wanakee from the Federal Way Day Center. And I know that Center Stage was there as well in spirit, and also the Federal Way Community Caregivers was there as well. And so it was really neat to work with people to get them to understand what our nonprofits are about and to get them to sign up because, as I've said before, we can't solve everything on our own. And we're going to have to work, all of us together as a community, to work towards solutions together. And I think that's really important. And so I was really impressed with that. On June 23rd, I will continue to have my coffee and conversations. That will be focused on just a listening session. I'm just going to, and I invite the public to come, of those that are watching or will watch later. June 23rd, stay tuned on my Facebook as for location. And that'll be 9:30 to 11 o'clock. And you can bring up whatever topic you'd like, and I'm here to take notes and to listen. Camp Kilworth, I've talked and I've had conversations with the deputy mayor, and I've requested for this to be added to the agenda, so I hope this will be added to the next agenda. But the Washington Trust, I always get their organization wrong. It's the Washington Public Trust Lands, if that's preservation.
Something like that.
Yeah, they have just listed Camp Kilworth as a property that's the most endangered, and so that I thought was positive, and so I'm hoping that they'll be here to present to that and tell us what that means and whatnot, and brief us on that. But Camp Kilworth is a land that I worry about quite a bit, and I know that there's a lot of things that are in transition right now, and so I'm hoping we can do whatever we can to save our history and save our heritage. And there's many more things that can be said, but for respect to my colleagues, I will end my report. Thank you.
Councilor Duclos.
Thank you. I'm going to take us out of the city. Because having been on the council, this is on my third term, and I've learned a lot about things. And I go out to Ocean Shores because I have a house out there. And I go to this particular store because they have a hyperbaric chamber, which I use because I have a nerve problem, and the chamber really helps the nerve die down. And I was talking to them a couple of weeks ago before the Memorial, it was over the Memorial Day, and their council had just met out there, and their LTAC, they have a fan fest, a Seahawks fan fest affair out there, and their LTAC committee advised, brought the proposal to the council to fund it, to give some money from the city to fund it. And the city council didn't do that. And this person has Seahawks Central store. She sells Seahawks things and like that. And I was talking to them after I came out of the chamber, and I said, you know what you have to do? I said, at the very next meeting, you need to go to the city council. Business people from your community need to go to the city council and tell them how much money they get and how much money they pay in B&O taxes to the city. And there was a business person in there at the time, and he heard what I was saying. He came over and talked. And their council meets on a Monday night, so they didn't meet that week, so they had to meet the next week. And they had 5 business people go and speak, and other people in the audience. And guess what? They restored the funding to that. So people, you do have an effect when you come to the committee, can come to council and present evidence. They showed how much money that was paid into the city, and all but one council member changed their vote in favor of supporting them. So I'm a hero out there right now with the business community. But, you know, I mean, that's why I think it is important for you folks to come and bring your issues to us. because sometimes we don't have all the answers, and sometimes we don't have all of the information, so, and that's all I'll say, and thank you very much.
Very good, thank you. Deputy Mayor Honda.
Thank you. I just want to talk about our top priority council goals at our retreat that this year. We walked away for a really good retreat, and we had 3 goals. One is to increase sustainable revenue streams to fully fund the city budget and programs. 2, enhance economic development activities to maximize opportunities in Federal Way. And 3, develop a plan to reduce homelessness. And so, as a deputy mayor, I have asked our FedRec committee to take goal 1 and 2, and we will be having some extra FedRec meetings for the next few months to discuss those. Our FedRec meetings usually run about 2 hours a normal FedRec meeting, and it was too long to add further discussions, so we thought best to add another meeting. And I've asked Councilmember Johnson to add the homeless, develop a plan to reduce homelessness to his committee, which he has done. Those meetings are open to the public, and you can come and you can listen, and you can also have a voice. We take public comment at those meetings. I want to thank Melinda from the Community Center. Every June, the city has fishing at Steel Lake where kids can pay $5 and they get to catch 2 fish that are in the net. And my husband and I go every year and take pictures and watch the kids. This year we took our little 5-year-old grandson, and he was so excited. Everyone was catching fish around him, and his pull, the fish would come and eat the bait, and he wasn't catching fish. It was 5 minutes of frustration, I think, for him, until he caught his first fish, and it plopped up on the deck, and then it flopped all over, and he might have had nightmares that night. Because it landed on me. It was on my foot. It was real. But anyway, I'd like to thank Melinda because this event sold out a week before. That's how popular it is. And they do just a really fantastic job of getting families out there for fun. It was really quite fun. And I'd also like to talk again about Flag Day. It's an event sponsored by the Federal Way Seroptimus Club, of which I'm a member, and King County Council member Yvonne Rockbauer. It is June 16th. It starts about 9:30. And it's at a new location this year, which is in the Federal Way Mall parking lot between Applebee's and the bank. You'll see a tent. There's going to be a tent because it either rains on Flag Day or it's really hot. So there'll be a tent to keep people dry and comfortable. And we look forward to having our citizens come out and celebrate our flag and our veterans. So thank you very much.
And Ben and I were out there. Ben caught 2 fish pretty quickly on Saturday, so it was a lot of fun, and we look forward to it. So, all right, with that, we are adjourned.